I used to love night shifts. There's something about the quiet hours between midnight and dawn that feels sealed off from the rest of the world. No traffic outside, no chatter in the hallways, no phones ringing off the hook. Just me, my desk, and the soft hum of the monitors. I started as a 911 dispatcher 3 years ago, and the first thing they tell you in training is to expect the unexpected. You never know what's going to be on the other end of that line. A screaming mother, a calm voice reporting a murder, or nothing at all. But they never prepared me for the nights when the line wouldn't let me go. That night, it was just me in the room. The call center is a rectangular space with 6 workstations, 3 on each side, separated by low cubicle walls. The overhead lights buzz faintly, too bright to be comfortable, so I usually leave half of them off. It makes the place feel calmer, softer, like a library no one visits. It was a Tuesday, around 2:15 a.m. I've been sipping cold coffee, scrolling through incident logs when my headset beeped. A new call. I straightened up, pressed the line button, and said my standard greeting. 911. What's your emergency? At first, I thought no one was there. Just faint static. I waited a second longer. Hello? Can you hear me? That's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady, and close. Sir? Ma'am? Are you in danger? I asked, leaning in slightly, as if that would somehow bring me closer to the sound. The breathing didn't change. No words, just a quiet rise and fall like someone standing right behind a door listening. Sometimes we get prank calls, teenagers trying to freak out the dispatcher, or people under the influence. Usually you can tell. They giggle, or the breathing is exaggerated. But this was calm, controlled, almost deliberate. I checked the screen for the call data, but the line readout was blank. No number, no address, not even unknown caller, just empty space. Can you tell me where you are? I asked again. If you're in trouble, stay on the line. The breathing continued. I don't know why I stayed so still. I could have transferred it, or disconnected, or logged it as a hang-up. But something about it felt wrong. Like if I let go, I'd be missing something important. I decided to try a different approach. If you can't talk, make a sound. Knock something over. Tap the phone twice. Nothing. Just that steady inhale and exhale. I realized something then. It matched me. Not exactly, but close enough. Every time I took a breath, the sound in my headset followed a half-second later, like an echo. I pulled the mic away from my mouth, holding my breath entirely. The sound kept going. I don't remember leaning back, but I did. My chair made a faint squeak, and I suddenly felt exposed, as if I'd been leaning too close to something I couldn't see. All right, I'm going to keep the line open, I said softly, mostly to fill the air. That's when the static came. Not loud, just a faint hiss under the breathing, like an old cassette tape. The kind of sound you only hear in an empty room when there's no other noise to drown it out. And under the hiss, I thought I heard something else. A shape in the sound. Not words, not exactly, but a murmur. I pressed my headset tighter to my ear. Hello. The breathing paused. It didn't stop. It paused. 2 seconds of silence. Then it started again, a little quicker. I felt something tighten in my chest. This wasn't a normal call. There was no accidental dial here, no drunk voice on the other end. Someone was listening, and they didn't want to speak. I marked the call on my log, tagging it as active, no voice, and glanced toward the big observation window. On the other side, the hallway was dark. I was the only one scheduled until 5 a.m. when the morning dispatcher came in. Still, I kept feeling like I wasn't alone. I turned back to the screen. Still no number. No origin point. No sign the call had even passed through the network. Which is impossible. Every call comes from somewhere. I asked again, can you tell me where you are? Are you safe? This time, there was movement. Not speech, but the breathing shifted. Closer, somehow. Louder, like the mouth was almost touching the mic. My skin prickled. If you need help, I can send someone. Static, then a faint click. I flinched. It was the kind of sound you hear when someone changes the position of a phone against their face. And then, the breathing matched me exactly. Perfectly in sync. Inhale with me. Exhale with me. I froze, testing it. Short breath, short breath. Long sigh, long sigh. It was like whoever was on the other end was inside my own head, mirroring me. I whispered, who are you? The breathing stopped entirely. I thought maybe they'd hung up, but the line stayed connected. 10 seconds passed, then 20. No sound. I started to log it as a disconnect when the breathing came back, slow and deep, but now it didn't match me anymore. It was faster. I knew, without any logical reason, that the faster rhythm wasn't from panic. It was from excitement. And then I heard it, faint but clear, a voice, right under the breath. I leaned forward so hard my headset cable pulled tight. Say that again. No answer, just more breathing. It was 2:38 a.m. when I realized I hadn't taken a sip of my coffee in 20 minutes. My hand shook when I reached for it, so I kept both hands flat on the desk instead. Another dispatcher might have hung up, but I couldn't. Something told me that if I ended the call, it wouldn't end. I stared at the console. Still no number. Still no origin. The system timer read 22 minutes and 14 seconds. The call had been active over 22 minutes. I said, I'm going to stay on the line with you. And that's when the breathing moved. Not louder, not quieter, but felt closer, like it wasn't in my headset anymore. I pulled the ear cup away just slightly and nearly dropped it. The sound was still there, not in the earpiece. In the room, I froze. It was faint, coming from somewhere behind me. Slow, patient breaths, almost matching the ones in the headset. I didn't turn around. I told myself if I didn't move, nothing would happen. My eyes stayed locked on the monitor, even as my peripheral vision started to swim. The call timer hit 25 minutes. Then, all at once, the line went silent. Dead silent. I waited. My pulse was in my ears. 30 seconds passed. 40. Then, a single, sharp inhale. Not in the headset. Directly behind my chair. I spun, but the room was empty. Just rows of desks, half the lights off, and that big observation window showing the black hallway. The headset in my hand beeped. The line was still connected. And the breathing was right back in my ear, like it had never stopped. I ended the call. For a second, I felt like I'd dropped something I wasn't supposed to. The relief didn't feel like relief. It felt like breaking a rule. I logged the incident, marking it for review. But the system wouldn't let me save it without a call origin. I typed unknown in every box I could, but the form just blinked red. Finally, I closed the screen without saving. The rest of the shift passed in that strange half-awareness you get when you know you're being watched. Every noise seemed sharper. The hum of the monitors, the faint rattle in the ceiling vents, the tiny tick of the wall clock. No more calls came in. Not until 4:12 a.m. when the phone rang again. I picked it up, hesitating before I spoke. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. Just breathing. And this time, it didn't match me at all. The night after that breathing call, I tried to convince myself it had been nothing. Some kind of crossed line, maybe, or a prank using one of those spoofing apps. My brain kept running through possibilities, bad connection, audio feedback, maybe even a coworker screwing with me. But the part one couldn't shake was how it felt when it moved into the room. I didn't write that part in the incident log. It sounded insane even to me. When my shift started the next night, the building felt different. I know that sounds dramatic, but there's a certain air you notice when you work nights alone. You get used to the shape of the silence. This was heavier, like the quiet was holding its breath. I settled in at my desk. Same lukewarm coffee, same scrolling through call records. I had almost managed to convince myself I was fine when the first call came in. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's voice, quick and breathless. My neighbor's trying to get into my house. She gave an address, and I started logging it in, but then I heard it. Faint, under her words. Breathing. I froze for half a second, then kept typing, not wanting her to notice the change in my voice. The sound was quiet enough that it could have been her, but it wasn't in sync. She was panting sharp and fast. The other breath was slow, even. Ma'am, can you lock your doors and go to a safe room? I said, already dispatching units. While she talked, the breathing didn't stop. It stayed the same, steady rhythm, like it was on its own track, layered under everything. The police reached her place within minutes, and the call ended. I took off my headset, rubbing my ears. I told myself it had just been background noise. Maybe she left the TV on. Maybe there was someone else in the room. But my stomach was tight. 10 minutes later, the next call came in. 911. What's your emergency? A man's voice. Yeah, I'm seeing a car flipped over on Highway 22. No lights, no movement inside. As he spoke, I heard it again. The same slow, steady breath. This time it was clearer. No static, no distortion. Just a smooth inhale and an equally smooth exhale. My mouth went dry. I glanced at the call data, different number, different location entirely. No reason this voice, this breathing, should be there. I kept my voice steady. Can you check if the driver's conscious without putting yourself in danger? The man moved closer to the wreck, and I could hear his footsteps crunching gravel. But the breathing stayed exactly the same volume. Not closer, not farther. Like it wasn't coming from him at all. The police reached him quickly, too. And again, the call ended. But the breathing didn't. It lingered. At first I thought maybe I hadn't hung up properly, but the console showed no active calls. My headset was silent except for that low, steady sound. It wasn't loud enough to be overwhelming. It was just there, like when you're in a room with a fridge and you stop hearing the hum, until you realize it's still humming. I tapped the line button, disconnected everything, even unplugged the headset. The breathing stopped. I let out a laugh, shaky and too loud in the empty room. I even stood up, walked a lap around the desks, telling myself it was over. Then another call came in. 911. What's your emergency? A kid's voice, maybe 10 or 11 years old. I think my mom's sick. She's lying on the floor. I asked for his address, keeping my tone calm. But before he even answered, I heard it. The same breath. Exact same rhythm as before. My chest felt tight. Is she breathing? The kid hesitated. Yeah, but she's making a weird noise. I could hear her in the background, ragged, uneven gasps. Completely different from the other breathing in my ear. That sound was untouched, unchanging, like it was happening in another place entirely. When the call ended, the breathing stayed again. This time, I didn't bother unplugging the headset. I just sat there listening. It didn't stop when my console lit up for the next call. It didn't even fade when I answered. It was a man reporting a break-in at his shop. His voice layered over the same slow inhale, exhale like two people were on the line at once. By the fifth call, I knew for sure. It didn't matter who called or from where. The breathing was just there now, threaded through every voice. I stopped trying to ignore it. I started timing it. Roughly 4 seconds per inhale. 4 seconds per exhale. No hitch. No cough. No change in pace. It was steady enough to lull me if it weren't so wrong. Around 3 a.m., I got a lull in calls. The room was silent except for the hum of the monitors. I took the headset off completely, set it on the desk, and leaned back in my chair. The breathing didn't stop. I looked at the headset. It was just sitting there, no calls connected, no audio feed. Still inhale, exhale. It wasn't loud now. It was like it had moved a little farther away. Not gone, just shifted. I stood up slowly, walked to the far end of the room. It followed. Not louder, not softer, just there. By now, my hands were shaking so bad, I kept them in my pockets. I didn't want to look like I was losing it, even though there was no one there to see. At 3:22, the next call came in. 911. What's your emergency? No voice, just breathing. Not the breathing. This was harsh, panicked. A man's breath, shallow and quick. And under it, that same slow rhythm. It took me a second to realize they weren't in sync. One was right in my ear. The other was on the line. I asked where he was, but he just gasped harder. I thought maybe he was running. Then he said, "It's following me." "What's following you?" The line cracked. The breathing in the background faded for half a second, and then came back louder. I tried to keep my voice calm. "I need your location." He whispered, "It's right behind me." The line went dead. The slow breathing stayed. By then I wasn't even pretending anymore. I knew it wasn't coming from any caller. It was coming from me. Not out of my mouth. Not on my chest. It was in the space between the headset and my ear. Like something was standing right there. Every call after that was a blur. People reporting accidents, fights, medical emergencies, all of it with that steady, patient sound stitched into the background. When the shift finally ended, I almost didn't take the headset off. I was scared it would follow me home to be why the third night. I'd stopped pretending the breathing was a coincidence. It was there when the phones rang. It was there between calls. Sometimes it was even there when the headset was on the desk, as if it didn't care whether I was listening or not. It wasn't loud. That was the worst part. If it had been loud, I could have called it interference or a glitch or anything else that made sense. But it was quiet, personal, like it was meant only for me. The call center felt smaller now. The long, empty space of it, the row of unoccupied desks, the stale air, it all pressed in tighter than it used to. Even the lights felt dimmer, like they weren't reaching the far corners anymore. It was about 1:45 a.m. when I started noticing the glass. The observation window runs along one side of the room, looking out into the hallway. It's not just for show. Supervisors use it during the day to monitor us without stepping inside. At night, it's nothing but a big black rectangle, my reflection staring back at me, the rest of the hall swallowed in shadow. That night, I kept catching movement in it. Not much, just the sense that something darker than the dark was shifting behind me. The first time, I thought it was the overhead light flickering. But when I turned around, all I saw were the empty workstations. The second time, I thought maybe a moth had flown past the glass. But there was no flutter, no shadow on the desk. By the third time, I couldn't tell if it was in the hallway or in the glass itself. I tried to focus on work. The calls were normal enough. A fender bender, a noise complaint, a kid who locked himself in the bathroom. And always, under it all, the steady, patient breathing. Around 2:30, I decided to check the security feed. Not because I thought I'd find anything, but because I needed proof that I was alone in the building. The cameras are split into 4 panels on the monitor: lobby, hallway, break room, and the dispatch floor, the very room I was sitting in. The feeds were all still. No movement, no sound. I leaned closer, looking at the dispatch floor panel. There I was sitting at my desk, headset on, typing. Nothing unusual. No one behind me. But when I looked up at the observation glass, there was movement again. A shape sliding across the black surface, just behind my reflection's shoulder. I whipped my head around, nothing there. I turned back to the monitor. The feed was empty. I told myself it was fatigue. My eyes were playing tricks, but my chest felt tight, and I realized I was holding my breath without meaning to. When the next call came in, I put all my focus on it. A woman reporting an intruder in her backyard. I dispatched units, kept her on the line, reassured her until help arrived. And in the black rectangle of the glass, a shadow crossed again. This time, I didn't turn around. I just stared at my reflection, my own face pale under the fluorescent lights, and the darker shape that slid silently across the space behind me. It wasn't walking. It wasn't floating. It just moved, like a smear of ink on water. When the call ended, I pulled up the hallway camera feed again. Nothing. The hall was as empty as ever. I switched to the dispatch floor feed. Still nothing but me. I sat back, staring at the split screens. For silent rooms. And then, in the dispatch feed, my reflection. Not me on the feed. My reflection in the glass. It was faint, but it was there like the camera was catching the glass from an angle. And behind the reflection, the shadow. It moved, slow and deliberate, from one side of the frame to the other. I felt my stomach twist. I leaned so close my forehead almost touched the monitor. In the feed, the shadow passed directly behind the reflection of my head. But when I looked over my shoulder, the space behind me was still empty. The feed showed nothing unusual now. Just me alone in the room. I stayed that way for almost an hour. Calls came in. I took them. I answered questions, sent help, filled out reports, all with the black rectangle of glass at my side, my own reflection in my peripheral vision. And over, shapes moved behind it. Never in the room, only in the reflection. At some point, I realized I could hear the breathing without the headset on. It was faint, just barely above the hum of the equipment, but it was there, slow and even, timed perfectly with the flickers of movement in the glass. Around 4:10 a.m., I decided to test it. I took off the headset entirely and set it on the desk. I turned my chair so I was facing the observation glass straight on. The hallway beyond was pitch black. My reflection stared back at me, pale and stiff. I waited, and then the shadow moved. Not behind me this time. Behind my reflection. I felt the difference immediately. The space between me and the glass felt wrong. Like there was more distance than the few feet that were really there. I didn't move. Neither did my reflection, but the shadow kept drifting, sliding up to my reflected shoulder. The breathing got louder. Not much, just enough that I felt it in my ears. And then my reflection blinked. I didn't. I jerked back, hard enough that my chair scraped against the floor. The reflection blinked again, and then it was just me, wide-eyed and breathing fast. I grabbed the headset like it was a lifeline, even though the call console was dark. I listened. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. It didn't matter whether I looked at the glass or the monitor or the empty room behind me. The breathing stayed. When the morning shift came in, I didn't say anything. I didn't know how to explain that the camera said I was alone, but the glass told me I wasn't. The overnight shift is always too quiet. That's the thing nobody tells you when you start at dispatch. You think the worst part is the chaos, the screaming, the gunshots you can hear faintly in the background, the people begging you not to let them die. But no, the worst part is when nothing happens. Silence has a way of pressing it on you here. It's 2:14 a.m., and the fluorescent lights hum above me, sickly and constant. My desk is littered with crumpled notepads, empty coffee cups, and the same cold, stale smell that seeps into everything after a few years in this room. To my left is the empty chair. It shouldn't be empty. The overnight partner is supposed to be here. Tonight, that was supposed to be Greg. He called off last minute. Said he wasn't feeling well. That happens sometimes. Life gets in the way. But tonight, with the memory of last week still clinging to me, that empty chair feels wrong. I keep glancing at it. I try to focus on the monitors in front of me, on the green, blinking lights, on the silent phone lines that I almost wish would ring. Almost. But every so often, my eyes drift left like some quiet part of me is expecting movement. And maybe it's because of what's been happening with the calls. The breathing. It started a few nights ago, soft, faint, always in the headset, never attached to a real call. Different numbers, different voices, but always at the end, the breathing. Sometimes it didn't even wait for the end. Sometimes it was there from the start, steady and slow, like someone sitting in the dark with the mic too close to their mouth. I'd asked around. No one else heard it. Or maybe no one else wanted to admit they did. At first, I thought it was some technical glitch. Crosstalk, interference, maybe a wiring issue. But after last night, when I heard it faintly even after the headset was off my head, yeah, I've been trying not to think about that. It's 2:17 a.m. when I hear it again. Not through the headset this time. It's behind me. I freeze, the pencil in my hand hovering above my notepad. It's faint, so faint I almost convince myself it's the HVAC, but it's there. A slow, measured inhale. A heavier, quieter exhale. The sound is coming from the direction of the other chair. I tell myself not to look. The second I look, I'll confirm it, and once I confirm it, I won't be able to take it back. But my head turns anyway, like my body's betraying me. The chair is still empty, but the air feels thicker, as if someone has been sitting there for a while, letting their body heat seep into the space. I swallow and turn back to my desk. The plastic of my headset feels slick in my palm. I put it on again, just to fill my ears with the faint buzz of the line. The comfort of knowing the sound in here isn't the only sound left in the world. Another inhale. Not in my ears. Behind me. I spin the chair halfway. Not enough to face it completely, just enough to catch the side of the desk, the glow of the monitors, and the edge of the empty seat. I think about saying something out loud. Who's there? Feels ridiculous. If it's a prank, they'll laugh. If it's not, well, I don't say it. Instead, I reach for the security camera feed. My fingers hover over the keyboard, moving slower than they should. The screen splits into a dozen angles. Hallways, stairwells, entrances. Nothing. I switch to the overhead feed of the dispatch room. My desk shows up perfectly. My chair, my posture, the way I'm hunched forward. The other chair, empty. Empty. But the sound doesn't stop. It's steady now, almost patterned. Like whoever it is leaning forward, breathing just close enough to the back of my neck to let the sound curl over my skin. I grip my pen so tightly my knuckles ache. There's something I keep noticing about the breathing. It's not tired, not rushed. It's slow, deliberate, like they want you to hear it, like it's part of the point. I try to distract myself with paperwork. Date, time, caller name, incident type. My handwriting is uneven, cramped. I keep making mistakes. I can feel my own pulse beating in my temples. And then, a creak. The chair beside me moves. Not much, just the slightest sound of weight shifting against the metal frame. I look straight ahead, not left, not at the feed. I don't need to see it. I know it moved. Another slow inhale. And then I feel it. The faintest shift of air against my cheek, like someone leaned in just enough to let their breath touch my skin before pulling back. I can't breathe. My chest locks up. My body feels anchored to the seat, but my mind is screaming to run. And then, nothing. The breathing stops. The air feels normal again. I sit there for maybe 2-3 minutes, my hands still clutching the pen, my eyes fixed on the grain of the desk. Finally, I force myself to look at the feed. Empty chair. My skin prickles with the thought that maybe it only looks empty. That maybe the feed, like the headset, is lying to me. I remember something my trainer told me when I started here years ago. Never trust the quiet. At 2:39 a.m., the phone rings. I nearly jump out of my skin, but I grab the line, eager for the distraction. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. Just breathing. For a second, I almost feel relieved. This I know. The headset breathing, not the room breathing. Hello. My voice cracks a little. If you need help, say something. The breathing grows louder, heavier, but there's still no voice. And then, softly, so soft I almost miss it. Look, it's the first word I've ever heard from them. My grip on the receiver tightens. Look where? Silence. Where do you want me to look? And then, very faintly, like they're leaning right next to the mic. Beside you. I whip my head toward the empty chair. It's not empty. There's no face, no body, just the impression of someone sitting there, the faintest outline in the air, like heat rising off asphalt. A shimmer. Oh wait, the breath is louder now. It's not coming from the headset anymore. I rip it off my head. The call drops into silence. The shimmer is still there. I can't move. I blink once and it's gone. The chair is empty again. The clock reads 2:42 a.m. I count the seconds until 3 o'clock. I don't answer another call. I don't move my chair. I just sit there, staring straight ahead, try not to breathe too loud, afraid it might answer me back. By the time my shift ends, the room feels normal again. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the first light is creeping in through the high windows. I grab my bag, glance one last time at the other seat, and tell myself it'll be fine tomorrow. But when I step out into the cool morning air, I swear I can still feel it. Someone walking just behind me, matching every breath I take that I don't even remember hearing the storm roll in. No thunder, no lightning, just a dead, heavy quiet that made the air feel thick in my lungs. It was a little past midnight when the first call came through. Rural line. I could tell by the way the signal crackled, like the wires were stretched too far. 911. What's your emergency? For a second, I thought no one was there. Then a man's voice. Low, shaking. Yeah, I don't know who else to call. My whole road's gone dark. I started logging the call. Power outage? No, I mean, he broke off. His breathing picked up, ragged in my ear. The whole thing's gone. Street lights, porch lights, every house. Nothing. I'm on County Line Road. It's like the night's thicker than it should be. I typed as he spoke, glancing at the power grid report. Nothing on my end showed a failure. No outages flagged. All right, sir, can you confirm your address for me? He gave it. I recognized it, way out past the last gas station. The kind of place you'd call middle of nowhere and mean it. Are you alone in the house? I asked. No, my wife's asleep upstairs. But his voice dropped to a whisper. There's something outside. I saw it when I opened blinds. What did you see? He didn't answer right away. I heard him moving, a soft shuffle across hardwood. Then, a faint click as he picked up another phone in the house, like he was checking his own line. When he came back, his voice was almost gone. Shadows. Between the houses. Moving wrong. Wrong how? They're not people. I wanted to pin him down on what he meant. Animal shadows? Branches in the wind? But before I could, something else caught my attention. It was quiet on the line. Too quiet. No ambient room sound. No hum of electricity. Not even static. Just dead air. Sir, are you still with me? Yes, he whispered, but I don't think it's safe to talk. That sentence made my throat go dry. Can you describe what's happening now? They're closer, between my place and the neighbors. But my neighbor's not home. The lights went out, and then a muffled thud came through the receiver. Not from his side, from mine. Somewhere in the dispatch room. I glanced over my shoulder, but the other desks were empty. My overnight partner hadn't shown up yet. Sir, I need you to stay on the line. I will, he breathed. But if they get to the porch, and then he stopped talking. I thought he'd hung up, but then I heard him breathe in sharply, like something had caught his attention. A door creaked open on his end. Slow. Sir, did you just open a door? No. Something slammed, and the call went dead. I tried to call him back. No answer. I flagged it for a patrol unit and sat there staring at the map, watching the tiny cursor blink over County Line Road. 5 minutes later, the second call came in. Different number. Same area. 911. What's your emergency? This time it was a woman. She was crying. I can't see my yard anymore. I started to ask her to explain, but she cut me off. The lights went out, and it's not just dark, it's gone. Like there's nothing past my porch. And something's moving out there. The hairs on my neck went up. What's your address? She gave it. A few houses down from the first caller. Ma'am, do you know your neighbors? Are they? They're not home. Nobody's home. It's just me and... She broke off. I heard her footsteps retreat from a window. They're at the road, she whispered. I can see them now. I tried to get her to describe them, but all she said was, they're tall. And then, click. Line dead. I didn't want to admit it, but my hand was shaking. This wasn't the usual kind of rural call, where someone hears a coyote and panics. This was different. I pulled up the security feed for the dispatch building, just to check if my own power was steady. It was, but the outside cameras, the ones pointing toward the street, they weren't showing anything. Just black. Not static. Not low light. Black. Like there was nothing out there. By the time the third call came in, I was already dreading what I'd hear. It was an old man this time. His voice was dry, slow. I think something's at my door. What's your location? He told me. Same road. Can you describe what you're seeing? I can't see anything. It's all shadows. But I hear it breathing. I swallowed. Sir, are you able to lock your door? It's locked. Okay, stay away from the windows. A patrol unit is en route. It won't matter, he said. That froze me. Why not? Because I've seen this before. I leaned closer to my headset. You have. He didn't answer right away. I could hear his breaths getting slower, heavier. When I was a boy. Summer blackout. Same road. The dark didn't just hide things, it brought them. Took my father right off the porch. Before I could respond, there was a deep, dull knock on his door. 3 slow knocks. Even through the phone, it made my skin crawl. Sir, do not open the door. I'm not going to. His voice shook. But it's already inside. The phone dropped. I heard it clatter on the floor. And then nothing. Not a scream. Not footsteps. Just a long stretch of silence, broken by a sound I can still hear if I think about it too long. Something dragging across the wood. I didn't get any more calls from County Line Road after that. The patrol unit finally reported back an hour later. No movement. No people. But the strangest thing was, every single house was empty. No signs of forced entry. No footprints in the dirt roads. Just abandoned homes. Every door locked, every light off. Like they'd all left at the exact same moment. The official report blamed a localized grid failure and evacuation due to suspicious activity. But there was no evacuation order. No one knew where the residents had gone. I still replay those calls sometimes. Not to look for clues, but to listen. Because every single one of them, the man, the woman, the old man, they all had the same background sound under their voices. Not static. Not silence. A slow, steady breathing. And when I turn my volume up all the way, just before each line goes dead, I swear it's not coming from them. It's coming from right next to me. I didn't expect to hear from him again so soon. It had been maybe 10 minutes since his first call, the one about the power going out and shadows walking between houses. I'd already made the log entry, marked it as possible prowlers, and forwarded it to the sheriff's night deputy. But when my phone lit up with his number again, I felt this dull heaviness in my stomach. like my body knew something was wrong before I even answered. I picked it up and barely got my name out before I heard him. He wasn't breathing the way people normally breathe when they're scared. It was fast but shallow, like he was trying not to make a sound. "They've stopped," he whispered. I asked him what he meant. "They're not moving anymore. Any of them." I tried to keep my voice level, told him to explain what exactly he was seeing. There was a pause. I could hear his steps, soft, uneven, like he was pacing barefoot on wood. The sound of a floorboard creaking. Then he spoke again, almost like he was afraid to turn his head toward whatever he was describing. "They're all facing my house now." The words didn't hit me right away. It was like my brain needed a second to process the image. I pictured a street, dark as ink. Houses swallowed by shadow. Shapes, dozens of them, standing still in driveways in the middle of the road between trees. All of them turned in the same direction. It was absurd, and yet the way his voice trembled, it didn't sound like someone telling a story to mess with me. I asked him to tell me how many there were. Another pause. Then, barely above a whisper, I don't think they're people." The temperature in the room felt like it dropped. I asked him what they looked like. He said, "Not tall enough. Not sure enough either." There, he stopped. His breathing got louder. I could hear it catch in his throat. I waited. Try not to rush him. "They're wrong. Their arms are too long, and their heads," he trailed off again. "They're tilted, all the same way, like they're listening to something." I started asking where exactly he was in the house, if he had any way out, if the doors were locked. He told me he was upstairs, in the bedroom at the front of the house. Curtains closed, lights off. He was peeking through the smallest gap he could manage without touching the fabric. I asked him if they were moving now. "No," he said, "but they're closer." That made my skin prickle. I asked him how long he'd been looking. He said maybe 30 seconds. "They don't move when I'm watching," he whispered. "But when I look away," his breath caught again. "I don't want to look away." I told him to keep talking to me, that I'd stay on the line until the deputy got there. But he interrupted me. No, you don't understand. There's no engine. There's no headlights." It took me a second to realize what he meant. He was talking about the deputy's cruiser. He was saying there was no sign of it. I looked at the dispatch board. According to the log, the deputy should have been on that road by now. At the very least, he should have checked in. But the status field was still blank. I called his number on the secondary line. No answer. When I switched back to the man, I could hear his breath rattling now. "They're at the end of my driveway," he said. I gripped the headset, asked if he could lock himself in the bathroom or a closet, anywhere without windows. He said he didn't want to move, that he was afraid the sound would make them. He cut himself off. There was a noise on the line. Not loud, not clear, but enough to make me pull the headset slightly away from my ear. It was like a low murmur, a bunch of voices, but too far away to separate into words. I thought maybe it was coming from outside his house, but it had this strange, muffled quality, like it was inside the phone line. The man whispered, "They're talking." I didn't ask what they were saying. I just told him to stay hidden, to stay on the line, and then the scream happened. It was sudden, loud enough to make my eardrum ache. He wasn't screaming in words, just a raw, desperate sound, cut through with pure terror. The kind of scream you don't make unless you think you're about to die. Then there was a crash, something shattering, and the line went dead. I called it back. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. I checked the dispatch map again. The deputy's icon hadn't moved, still showing en route. My chest was tight. I thought about calling the state patrol, getting someone else out there, but in the back of my head, I knew it wouldn't matter how many cars showed up if what he said was true. I didn't want to picture those shapes in the dark, all facing the same house, all listening. But I couldn't stop. Every time I blinked, I could see them. And worse, I could imagine what it would feel like to open your eyes and find them closer than before. That night, the deputy finally checked in, almost 40 minutes after I'd lost the call. His voice was off, flat, like he'd been reading from a card. He said there was no one at the house. No sign of forced entry. No damage. No resident. When I asked him to confirm the address, there was a pause. Then he said it didn't exist. That was impossible. I had taken a call. I had logged it. I had repeated the address to the man 3 separate times. But when I looked down at my notes, the space where I'd written the street name was blank. Not crossed out. Not smudged. Just empty. like the ink had never touched the paper. I didn't sleep when my shift ended. I sat in my car outside the station until the sun came up, telling myself the daylight would make me feel better. It didn't, because when I finally drove home, I passed County Line Road, and every single porch light was off. That I kept telling myself it was just bad reception. That's all it could be. The storm outside had been nothing more than a flicker on the radar earlier in the night. A light rain, the kind that makes the asphalt shine under streetlights. But then, the lights went out. County Line Road was dark, and the calls started. By the time I reached for the radio to check on the units, I already had that crawling feeling under my skin, the one that tells you something's wrong before you can even name it. Unit 12, status check. Static. I tried again. Unit 14, you copy? More static. It wasn't the usual scratchy kind, either. This wasn't wind or poor signal. It was like something was smothering the airwaves, a dead, empty silence that shouldn't exist. Dispatch is supposed to be a constant. The radio might crackle, the signal might fade, but it never goes silent like that. I checked the monitor. Their GPS pings were frozen, last positions all clustered around the same stretch of county line. Not moving. One by one, they'd gone quiet, and the calls kept coming. The first one was a woman whispering so low I had to press my headset into my ear. "They're outside," she said. "They've been walking between the houses all night. Now they're watching me." I asked her who, and the line went dead. The second call came not 30 seconds later. A man's voice, tense quick. I can see them from my porch. They're in the road, just standing there, like they're waiting. Third call. A teenager, trying not to cry, saying she saw shapes in the yard, tall enough to block out the faint glow of the overcast sky. Every voice was different. Every story was the same. I kept staring at the GPS display. The patrol cars should have been moving, circling the block, doing perimeter checks. But no one was calling in, no one was updating. The rain stopped. I didn't notice until the quiet pressed in so hard that the hum of the fluorescent light above me felt deafening. Another call lit up the board. I answered. Dispatch. Breathing. No voice, just a soft rise and fall of breath. I almost hung up, thinking it was another bad line, until I realized it wasn't just random. It was paced, slow, deliberate, like the caller wanted me to hear it. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This is dispatch. Who am I speaking with?" The breathing stopped. Click. Line dead. I glanced at the empty chair next to mine, the one meant for the overnight partner who never showed up. For the first time that night, I wished someone had been sitting there. The phone rang again. This time, it was one of the officers' wives. She was panicked, her words spilling out so fast I had to stop her. She said her husband had called her 10 minutes earlier, told her he was getting out of the cruiser to check something in the road. He'd left the phone on speaker. She heard him say, "Hey, you need to step back from the vehicle." Then silence. Then a sound she couldn't describe, except to say it didn't belong to anything she'd ever heard a person make. And then nothing at all. The board lit up again, 2 more calls. I patched one through to a holding line and answered the other. A man whispered, "Do you feel it?" I asked him what he meant. "The watching," he said. I wrote the word in my log without thinking. Watching. Underline it twice. I could hear something in his background, faint like wind through leaves, but steadier. Closer. I told him to get somewhere safe, lock the doors, stay on the line. He didn't answer. The line didn't go dead, either. I just couldn't hear him anymore. I checked the time. Less than 20 minutes had passed since the first blackout call. 20 minutes, and already I felt like I'd been sitting in that chair for hours. I tried the radio again. Unit 12, 14, 9, 7. Anyone on county line? Respond. A burst of static. Then something else. I leaned in. It wasn't a voice, not exactly, but it had rhythm, like words being dragged out of the static, warped and broken. "Don't come." I froze. "Don't look." I pulled the headset off and set it down like it might bite me. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring at the screen, watching those frozen GPS dots. Another call came in. Another voice whispering about shadows. Another story about shapes standing still now, all facing the houses. And then the sound of glass breaking. A scream. Dead air. The next call was a boy, maybe 8, 9 years old. His voice shook, but he was trying to be brave. They were moving before. he said. Now, they're just looking at the house. I asked him who was with him. No one, he said. Mom went to check the porch light. She's still out there. I wanted to tell him to go to her, but something in my gut, deep and cold, told me not to. Stay where you are, I said. Stay hidden. I didn't hear him respond. Just the faint sound of a door creaking, then footsteps. The line went quiet. By now, my hands were trembling over the keyboard. Every call, every voice, it all started blurring together. The same words, the same fear. I could see my reflection in the dark window across from the desk. Behind me, the empty chair sat in shadow. Another call, another breath on the line. Closer this time. It almost sounded like it was in the room that I didn't want to answer the phone. It sounds ridiculous for a dispatcher to think that. My job is to answer calls, to be the calm in the storm. But when that line lit up, the one tag to County Line Road, my hand just hovered. It had been quiet for about 15 minutes. No screaming, no static, just silence. But I knew the quiet wasn't a good sign. Nothing about that place tonight had been a good sign. I picked up, forcing my voice into the usual calm tone. 911, what's your emergency? It was him again, the man from earlier. The one who had been watching shadows move between the houses. The one who had screamed mid-call when they all turned to face his home. Except, now he wasn't screaming. His voice was low, uneven, almost like he was whispering into the receiver, but trying not to let someone else hear. They stopped moving again, he said. I swallowed. The shadows. Yes. He drew out the word, dragging the S, like he was stalling for time. They're not outside now. I can't see them from a window anymore. That's good, I said automatically, though my gut told me it wasn't. No, he whispered. It's not good. I think they're inside. The sound of those words in my ear made my stomach knot. Sir, are you in a locked room? I asked. Yes, he said, then paused. The kitchen. I could see the front door from here. It's still shut. Still locked. Okay. Stay put. Don't make noise. Patrol is... I stopped. The words on their way felt wrong. Patrol wasn't coming. Not anymore. Both units had gone dark earlier tonight. No radio contact. No GPS ping. Just gone. I tried again. We're working on getting help to you. Just stay on the line. He didn't respond. Sir. And that's when I heard it. Not him. Another voice. It was faint, like it wasn't even speaking into the phone, but I could still make it out. A whisper, low and steady, threaded through the line like smoke curling under a door. Open the door. I froze. The man on the other end gasped. Did you hear that? Yes, I said before I could stop myself. It's not coming from outside, he said, his words quivering. It's in here. It's closer now. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Open the door. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't threatening. It was calm, patient, like someone giving simple instructions to a child. And I knew, without knowing how, that it wasn't talking about the front door. Sir, don't move, I said. Stay where you are. He exhaled sharply. It's in the doorway. What doorway? My kitchen doorway. It's just standing there. His breath hitched, shaky. It's black. Not like a shadow. Not flat. It's thicker. It's wrong. The whisper came again, but it didn't sound like it was coming through the phone anymore. It was as if it were behind me. I turned in my chair, heart pounding, eyes darting to the dim corners of the dispatch room. Nothing was there. I gripped the phone harder. Don't open anything. Do you hear me? The man's voice was higher now. I'm not even looking at it. A pause. Then, in a tone that made my skin crawl. It's smiling. I wanted to ask him how something made of darkness could smile, but I didn't. My brain wouldn't let me form the words. The whisper came again. Open the door. And this time, I could hear it on my end without the phone. Sir, listen to me, I said quickly, forcing my voice to stay steady. You need to... He cut me off with a scream. Not a startled yell. Not fear in the moment. It was the sound of someone breaking. It moved, he cried. It's in the room. It's right in front of me. The line crackled. I thought I heard something wet, like breath moving through water. Then, calmly, the whisper spoke again. But it didn't say, open the door this time. It said, you already did. The man made a choking noise. I heard a thud, like his phone had fallen. I could still hear the room, his ragged breathing, a faint hum in the air, but no footsteps, no movement. And then, so soft I almost thought I imagined it. A third voice. This one was louder, sharper. It was his. Except it wasn't. The tone was wrong. The pacing was wrong. But it had his exact voice. And it said, clear as anything. She let me in. The call ended. I sat there, holding the deadline, my knuckles white around the handset. My headset felt too tight, like it was pressing the whisper into my ear. I checked the board for any incoming updates from the area. Nothing. No power. No patrol. But then the county line lit up again. Same number. I didn't want to answer. And for a long, awful moment, I didn't know I've been a dispatcher for 6 years now. I've heard panic. I've heard grief. I've heard voices break apart as they try to explain what's happening while something terrible is happening. But I've never heard my own voice calling for help. Not until that night. It was a little past 2 in the morning. The building was quiet, except for the soft hum of the server room down the hall and the occasional squeak of my chair when I shifted. Night shifts are strange. You feel like the rest of the world is asleep, and you're just holding this fragile line between safety and chaos. There's a certain rhythm to the calls at night. Drunk and disorderlies. Domestic disputes. Car accidents. You get used to it. You think you've heard all. The call came in at 2:14 a.m. No background noise. No static. Just a clear connection. I answer like I always do. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause. Not the kind where someone's unsure what to say, but the kind where they already know exactly what they're about to say, and they're letting you feel the weight of it first. Then I heard my voice. My exact voice. Same tone. Same pacing. Same slight rasp I get when I've been up too long. And it said, "You're not real." For a second, my mind didn't even register the words, just the uncanny fact that I was hearing me. It wasn't impression. It wasn't similar. It was me, down to the little breath between syllables, the way my voice dips slightly at the end of a sentence. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the only thing my brain could do while it scrambled to find a rational explanation. "All right, who is this? You having a laugh?" I asked, but my voice didn't laugh back. It just said, "I'm the real one. You're the copy." And my mouth went dry. It's hard to explain how quickly the human brain can go from certainty to panic. I knew it was a prank. I knew someone was messing with the system. Maybe they'd pulled an old recording from a call I'd handled. Maybe it was a coworker playing some sick joke. But the words weren't from any call I'd ever taken. And the tone, it wasn't mine exactly. It was like me, but stripped of emotion. Cold. Observing. Like it was just stating a fact. I tried to keep my voice steady. "All right, sir, if this is an emergency, I'm going to need you to—" "You need to listen," the voice interrupted. "You're going to try to hang up. You're going to try to call someone else. You can't. The line won't let you. And when you turn around, you'll see me." I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to flag the call, record it, trace it. But I didn't hang up. I didn't turn around. Instead, I said, "Where are you calling from?" There was a soft exhale on the line, mine again. "I'm calling from your station. Right now. I'm looking at the back of your head." A chill rippled down my neck. I didn't move. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. The voice on the line mirrored me. I could hear, in real time, the way I swallowed. The tiny hitch in my breathing. It was me. Perfectly synced. I muted the headset for a second. Keyed into the internal channel. "Anyone in the room with me?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. The overnight supervisor came back almost instantly. "No, it's just you, man." "What?" I unmuted the line. "Listen," I said, "if you're in the building, security will—" "They won't see me," the voice cut in. "They never do. You don't either, not yet." And then it laughed. Not loud. Soft, almost curious. The kind of laugh you make when you're turning something over in your mind, like you're figuring it out as you go. I started typing a trace request. It came back instantly. Source unknown. Not blocked. Not withheld. Just nothing. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I wanted to hang up, but I couldn't. I'm trained to keep people talking, even the crazies. And if this was a breach of our comm system, I needed to know how deep it went. "Why don't you tell me what you want?" I asked. The voice went quiet for a long moment. Then, "You think you've been alive for 29 years. You think you were born. You think you have parents. Memories. But they're mine. They're copies. And I'm here to take them back." I felt my stomach knot. There's this irrational part of your brain that, even when you know something can't be true, starts poking holes in your certainty. Little thoughts. What if? What if my memories were false? What if I wasn't the original? I tried a soundboard. All right, buddy, I think you've had enough TV for one night. But the voice said, sharper now. Don't call me buddy. I'm you. And then it said my full name. First, middle, last. The way I sign it on forms. The way my mother says it when she's angry. I felt something in me break. A thin layer of distance I'd been keeping from the whole thing. Because this thing knew me. Knew details no one else on a prank call should know. I glanced over my shoulder, even though I'd promised myself I wouldn't. Of course, no one was there. Just the rows of empty desks and monitors, screensaver light bouncing off dark glass. When I turned back, the voice said, "You're alone because I need you alone. The others won't remember you were here. When you leave tonight, they'll swear you went home hours ago." My throat tightened. I told myself it was impossible. That's not how people work. That's not how reality works. I was about to tell it off, to end the call when something happened. Through the headset, faint, but there, I heard a second sound. Breathing. Not mine this time. Close to the mic, slow and deliberate. And it was behind a voice. "Do you hear her?" my voice asked. But this time, it wasn't taunting. It sounded almost concerned. "She's the one who built you." I ripped the headset off. The line stayed open. I could still hear my own voice bleeding out of the speakers, calm as ever. "Run if you want, but when you wake up, you'll be in my place. And I'll be answering the calls." I cut the line. It took 3 tries. The system didn't want to drop it. When the screen finally went back to idle, I just sat there, my hands shaking over the keyboard. For the rest of the night, no calls came in. The silence was worse than the voice, because every so often I'd hear it, not over the headset, but faint somewhere behind me in the room. Breathing, perfectly in sync with mine, that I didn't sleep that night. Not after that call. I kept hearing my own voice in my head, but it wasn't me. It was the other me, the one on the line, the one who called himself me. When I finally closed my eyes, I saw my own mouth moving in the dark. I couldn't see the rest of my face, just the lips, and they whispered things I didn't want to hear. By the time I got back to the station the next evening, I was running on caffeine and nerves. The place looked the same as always, fluorescent lights buzzing, phones ringing, the smell of burnt coffee in the air, but something about it felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in a few inches overnight. I sat down on my console and tried not to look at the empty seat to my left. That was where Marcy usually sat, but she was on vacation, which meant fewer distractions and more time for my thoughts to circle back to the call. It was only a matter of minutes before I found myself pulling up the audio log from last night. I told myself it was just to check the line quality, but my finger hesitated over the play button. I finally hit it. The first part was just as I remembered, the faint hiss, my own voice answering. Then his voice, my voice, the same tone, the same pacing, even the way he paused when he spoke. But this time, I noticed something else, something that made my stomach turn. It wasn't just that he sounded like me. He breathed like me. I mean, identical. I have this weird little thing I do when I'm nervous. I exhale through my nose in this short, uneven way, and I could hear him doing it, at the exact same spots. I stopped the recording. Suddenly, the headset felt heavier on my head. I almost shut it all down right there, but something in my gut told me to keep listening. When I played it again, I noticed something else. He knew things. Little things. He said my middle name. Nobody uses my middle name. I don't even put it on forms. My parents barely said it unless I was in trouble. He also mentioned a red mug I drank from during my shift. I glanced at my desk. It was sitting there right next to me, chipped along the rim. I'd never mentioned it to anyone here. And then there was the part that made my skin go cold. He brought up the night my brother broke his arm when we were kids. The sound of the bones snapping, the way my mom screamed, things I never talked about. Not with anyone. I sat there with the audio still playing, and all I could think was, this isn't just someone imitating me. This is someone who has been inside my life. Halfway through, the voice on the tape dropped into this low whisper. I leaned in to make it out, and my whole body tensed. It said my address, not just the street, the apartment number. And then, you should really check the lock on the back door. You didn't turn it all the way last night. I paused it. My hands were shaking. I live alone. Nobody has a key. And yeah, I had forgotten to turn the deadbolt last night. For a second, I thought maybe someone from the station was screwing with me. But that didn't make sense. The call came in on the public line, and it was logged like any other. There's no way to fake it without leaving a trail. I shut the playback down and tried to focus on the next call that came in. Routine stuff, fender bender, noise complaint, a drunk guy walking in traffic. But I could feel that other voice lurking in the back of my mind, like it was waiting for me to be alone again. About an hour later, the line lit up. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. 911, what's your... And there it was. My voice. Soft. Calm. Almost friendly. Why'd you stop listening to me? I froze. Who is this? You know who I am. Every instinct in me screamed to hang up. But I didn't, because part of me needed to hear what it was going to say next. You didn't check the lock, it said. I told you to. You went straight to bed. You were tired. I could hear it in your breathing. I felt my skin prickle. You're lying, I said. You're trying to mess with me. It chuckled, my chuckle. Why would I lie to myself? I swallowed hard. My eyes kept darting to the dark hallway outside the comms room, like something might be standing there. I don't know what you want, I said. There was a pause. Then, I want you to remember. That word hit me like a slap. Remember what? I didn't ask out loud, because some part of me didn't want the answer. Instead, I said, if you call here again, I'm tracing it. Another pause. Then almost playfully, you think you could trace your own line? Before I could say anything, the call went dead. I sat there, staring at the monitor, my reflection faint in the glass. And I swear, for a split second, the reflection's mouth moved before mine did. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That I'd just taken a 911 call for myself? I could already hear the jokes. But when I got home that night, I couldn't bring myself to unlock the door right away. I stood there, key in hand, staring at the lock. What if whatever that voice was right? What if it had been inside? I double-checked the deadbolt, checked the windows, even opened the closet doors. Nothing. But I kept catching myself glancing at the mirrors. Not because I thought I'd see something behind me, but because I was afraid I'd see something that looked like me, but wasn't me. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and sat in the kitchen with the lights on. I poured coffee into the red mug, even though I didn't want it. And then, from the other room, my phone rang. I didn't move. Just listened to it ring. 4 rings. 5. It stopped. A minute later, the station's recorded voicemail pinged my email. It was a missed call forwarded from the dispatch line. I opened the audio. There was no greeting, just my own voice whispering, "You're not the real one." The rest of the file was breathing. Slow, measured, the way I breathe when I'm trying not to panic. I closed the laptop, sat there in the quiet, and realized something. I didn't know if I was more afraid of hearing that voice again, or of the moment when I stopped being able to tell which one of us was talking. That I don't remember when the room started feeling too small. It wasn't that the walls had moved or that my desk suddenly felt closer to my knees. It was something else. Something in my chest. Like I was boxed in, but from the inside. I've been working at the console for almost 4 hours straight. Just another night of half-asleep emergency calls, wrong numbers, and static on the line. The incident from earlier, the echo call, as I've been forcing myself to label it, was still there, pressed into the back of my mind like a thumbprint in wet clay. Every time I tried to smooth it over, I could still feel the indent. No one else here knew about it. I decided not to tell them. How would I even start? Hey, I picked up a call earlier and the guy on the other end sounded exactly like me. Same voice, same breathing, and he says he's the real me. I could practically hear the polite laugh, the glance toward the clock, the quiet, maybe get some air, but I wasn't laughing. The floor hummed with the low buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant drone of other operators talking into their headsets. Everything felt overly sharp tonight. The clack of keys, the tinny feedback of someone's headset when they shifted in their seat, the way my own breathing sounded too close. Then my supervisor, Dean, leaned over the half wall of my booth. "Hey," he said, voice casual, but his eyes doing this little dart. "You had just got back in?" I frowned. "Back in? From outside. I haven't been outside." He blinked, then laughed in that awkward way people do when they think you're messing with them. "Well, maybe you've got a twin then. Jenna swears she just saw you in the parking lot. Like 5 minutes ago." I froze, my hands still hovering over my keyboard. Parking lot. Yeah. She was walking back in from her smoke break. Said you were standing near the far light pole. Didn't say hi, though. Said you looked like you were on the phone. Figured you didn't want to be bothered. I stared at him. Dean, I haven't left this seat in 4 hours. He tilted his head like he was trying to read something in my expression. Well, I guess she was mistaken, he said finally, though he didn't sound convinced. Anyway, carry on. He walked off, but I didn't carry on. I sat there, hands motionless on the desk, the sound of other people's voices around me fading into a dull smear. The image had already formed in my head, me, or something that looked like me, standing out there under the buzzing light, head tilted down like I was listening to something on the phone. But I didn't have my phone with me. It was in my locker. I tried to tell myself Jenna just saw someone else, that it was dark, that her eyes played tricks. But Jenna wasn't the type to mix up faces. She once remembered the exact hair color of a driver from a hit-and-run case 2 years after the call. At some point, I realized I'd been staring at my own reflection in the darkened monitor screen. Not just looking, searching, checking for differences. I leaned closer, studying my face, the tired hollows under my eyes, the faint crease between my brows. But the glass only gave me back what I already knew, or what I thought I knew. It was about 15 minutes later when Jenna herself came over. She perched on the edge of the desk, a coffee cup cradled in her hands. So, she began, drawing the word out. You gonna tell me what you were doing out there? I didn't look up. Wasn't me. Her laugh was short. Right. You've got an identical cousin I don't know about. I'm serious. Yes, so am I. She leaned in. You were wearing that. She gestured to my dark hoodie, and you had your hood up, just standing there. Head turned like you were listening to someone. I shook my head slowly. Jenna, I was on my desk. She watched me for a moment. You sure? Yes, I'm sure. Her smile faltered a little. Weird, she murmured. Guess I could have sworn. But she stopped herself, like she didn't want to finish the thought. She sipped her coffee instead and walked away. I kept hearing her voice, though, that little catch in it when she said you were listening to someone. The rest of the shift dragged like an anchor through mud. Calls came in. I answered them. My hands typed notes, my voice gave instructions, but my brain kept pulling back to that far end of the parking lot. The cold patch of asphalt under the buzzing light where whatever she saw had been standing. Near the end of a shift, I stepped outside. The air hit me, cold, damp, smelling faintly of rain even though the sky was clear. The lot was nearly empty now. Only a few cars sat scattered across the dark expanse, their windows catching the glow of the tall lamps. I walked toward the far pole, my footsteps loud in the stillness. Each step felt like I was pressing into a place I shouldn't be. The hum of the light above was constant, almost too steady, like a tone just under hearing. When I got there, I just stood, trying to see what she saw, imagining my own frame here, hood up, head bent. The idea that something could wear my face like a coat, that it could walk into the edges of my life without anyone stopping it, made my skin prickle. I turned to head back inside. That's when I noticed the glass. The front doors of the dispatch center are 2 wide panels of reflective safety glass. Even in the dim lot light, I could see myself walking toward them, my reflection matching my stride, my tilt of the head. Until it didn't. I stopped dead. The reflection didn't. It took one more step forward. I stood there, the air flattening in my lungs, watching it walk closer until its face was almost pressed to the inside of the glass. And then it just stood there, head cocked slightly like it was studying me. I couldn't move, couldn't look away. The lights above buzzed harder in my ears. After what felt like a minute, it stepped back, just one slow step, and then I was looking at my own reflection again, perfectly in sync. When I finally got inside, the warmth felt wrong, too heavy. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even stop at my locker. I just grabbed my bag and left. On the drive home, I kept glancing at the mirrors. Not because I thought someone was following me, because I was afraid one of those glances would show me something sitting in my back seat, wearing my face that I was already shaking before the phone rang. Not the kind of shaking people notice, more like the tremor inside your bones when your nerves are shot and you've been carrying the weight of something you can't explain. By then, I'd stopped trusting what I saw in the mirror. Stopped trusting my voice. Even my own hands felt like they belonged to someone else. The night shift was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday. I sat at my desk, eyes flicking between the screens, watching the red and green blips of incoming lines. But nothing came in. No calls. No chatter from the others. Just the low hum of the building's ventilation and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights above. It had been 3 days since the first time I'd heard me on the other end of the line. 3 days since the echo stopped being just a strange coincidence and became something personal, something aimed at me. And after the thing in the parking lot, after my coworkers swore they'd seen me standing outside while I was here, I didn't know where the line was anymore between me and whatever that was. I considered quitting. I'd even rehearsed how I'd say it to the supervisor. But every time I thought about walking away, this sick feeling knotted up in my stomach. Like leaving wouldn't save me. Like whatever was happening didn't care where I was. It would just follow. The phone rang. A sharp, piercing tone that cut through the silence. I jumped, my heart kicking like it had been waiting for this. I put the headset on. 911. What's your emergency? No answer. Just a faint hiss of static. I almost repeated myself, but then I heard breathing. Slow, uneven, shaky. My own. It was my voice. Again. Help me. 2 words. Ragged, terrified. But not from here. Not through this building's clean audio feed. It sounded far away, like it was traveling across a huge, empty space before reaching me. Like it was shouting from the bottom of a well. This is Dispatcher 719, I said automatically, my training kicking in even while my throat tightened. Who is this? The breathing grew sharper. You know who I am. It was my exact voice. Same tone, same cadence, but cracked, breaking, like whoever was speaking had been crying for hours. My mouth went dry. Where are you? Silence for a second. Then, I don't know. It's dark. It's cold. I can't find the door. I sat up straighter, glancing at the other dispatchers. No one else was reacting. No one seemed to notice that I was pale and gripping the edge of my desk. Listen to me, I said slowly. What happened? Are you hurt? There was a sound in the background of the call, faint, metallic, a kind of clanging far off. It reminded me of pipes expanding in winter, only deeper, hollower. I think the voice broke. I think they put me here. You have to get me out. But I already knew I wasn't going to get an answer to that. My pulse was climbing, and my chest was tight. Then my voice, whispered, They're coming. The line went dead. I sat there with my headset still pressed against my ear, listening to nothing. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen in front of me. Tired eyes, pale skin, and I swore for half a second. My lips moved even though I wasn't speaking. The rest of the night passed in fragments. Every shadow in the room felt heavier. Every cough or chair squeak from a coworker made me flinch. And every time the phone rang, my stomach dropped like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. By 3 a.m., I convinced myself it was over for the night. That maybe the call had been some kind of sick prank. A recording. Something I could explain, even if it didn't make sense. Then, the ringing started again. Only, it wasn't from aboard. The line on my console stayed dark. The sound was coming from somewhere else. A single, steady ring, old, analog metallic. The kind of tone I hadn't heard since the station replaced the old phones years ago. It was coming from the far wall, where one of the old desk units had been left plugged in for emergencies. Nobody used it. Nobody touched it. But now it was ringing. I got up, legs stiff, and walked toward it. Each ring felt louder, sharper, cutting through the room like it was meant only for me. None of the other dispatchers even looked up, like they couldn't hear it. I picked up the receiver. Hello. What came through wasn't static. It was screaming. Not angry. Not aggressive. This was the kind of scream that empties you out from the inside. The sound of someone being undone. And under it, tangled inside the noise, I recognized my own voice. It was me, screaming. I froze, pressing the phone tighter to my ear, like I could push through it and make sense of the chaos. Help me. My voice shrieked, cracking in pain. They're burning out of me. Then a wet, choking sound. And then nothing but those deep, metallic clangs again. I whispered into the receiver. Where are you? For a moment, I thought I'd lost the connection. Then, through the hiss, came the answer. Turn around. I spun in my chair, heart slamming so hard it hurt. The room looked the same. Rows of desks, glowing monitors, tired coworkers. No one standing behind me. No one watching. But in the glass of the far window, the one that looked out into the dark parking lot, I saw something. My reflection was there, of course. But it was smiling. Not a friendly smile. Not even human, really. Too wide. Too certain. And the worst part, it moved slightly out of sync with me. A fraction of a second behind. Like it was choosing whether to follow. I blinked and it was gone. The call didn't come back that night. Or the next. But I kept waiting. Every shift, every ring of the phone, I was braced for my own voice to slip through again. I stopped talking to people unless I had to. I didn't tell my coworkers. Because what could I say? That I was taking emergency calls for myself? That there was a version of me somewhere, screaming in the dark? They put me on leave. Or worse, it was last night when the silence finally broke. The line lit up at 2:13 a.m. I answered like I always do, my voice steady only because I practiced sounding normal. 911, what's your emergency? This time, my voice on the other end didn't sound broken or scared. It was calm, almost relieved. I got out, it said. The words slid through me like ice water. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, waiting for more. I'm here now, it continued. And I think you're where I was. I opened my mouth to protest, to tell him that wasn't possible, but then I looked at the glass again. And my reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It was watching me with pity. The night was quiet. Too quiet. The way only a rural shift can be when the calls dry up. The hum of the overhead lights had started to blend into my thoughts. I've been watching the clock more than the monitors, tapping my pen against the notepad, my eyes heavy from the dead air. That's when a line lit up. Not with the frantic strobe of multiple lines, just a single soft blink. One call. I answered the way I always do, voice steady, neutral. 911, what's your emergency? For a second, nothing. Just a faint hiss like static, but softer, slower. Almost like breathing. Then, a man's voice, low and trembling. He's above me. I sat up straighter, pen frozen in my hand. Sir, can you tell me your location? The voice was shaky, like he was whispering so he wouldn't be heard. I'm in the crawl space. Under the house. I can hear him moving. He's dragging himself right above me. I push my headset tighter against my ear, trying to parse every sound in the background. There was a faint creak, then a muffled scuffle. Not the kind of noise you get over a bad connection. It felt real. Immediate. Okay, sir. Stay on the line with me. I need your address. He gave it to me, clear, not slurred, not panicked to the point of confusion. I typed it in. Nothing. No record. No match. The system didn't even give me a close result. Or did you mean? It just blinked back the way it does when you enter something completely made up. Sir, I'm not finding that address. Can you double check it for me? I know where I live, he said, almost offended. Then a pause. Wait. I heard something then. Something that didn't belong on a phone line. A long, dragging inhale. Not the caller's. This one was wet, heavy, close to the receiver. He whispered again, faster this time. He's right above me. I could see the dust falling through the boards. He's moving toward the hatch. I typed the address again, double-checked the county, the road names, nothing. My eyes flicked to the secondary system, the mapping software we use for cell pings. The GPS showed nothing but an empty grid in the middle of nowhere. No house, no road, just black space. Sir, is there anyone else in the house with you? No, he said. Then quieter. He's not supposed to be here. The sound above him grew louder. A slow, irregular shuffle. Then a pause. Then the same dragging shuffle again. He whispered, almost to himself. It's like he's pulling himself. Not walking, just pulling. I tried to keep my voice calm, but my hand was already moving to wave down my supervisor. Okay, sir, stay where you are. Don't make any noise. I'm going to get help to you. The man made a choked noise, like he wanted to agree but wasn't sure he could keep quiet. I muted my mic, relayed the situation. My supervisor nodded, pulled up another terminal. But when she typed in the address, she gave me the same look the system had, blank, confused. I went back on the line. Sir, are you sure this is your address? Could it be under another name? A landmark nearby. He breathed into the phone, each inhale shaky, ragged. It's my house. My grandfather built it. There's a big elm tree out front, mailbox with our name. He trailed off. I didn't have to ask why. There was a loud thump above him, hard enough that I heard it through the line. Then another, slow, deliberate. His whisper was so low, I had to strain to hear. He's lowering something through the hatch. I heard it too, the faint rattle of metal on wood. Something scraping. I glanced at the mapping screen again. Still nothing. No signal. But he hadn't hung up. This wasn't a dead zone. The line was perfect. Too perfect. No static except for that awful breathing sound. What does he look like? I asked before I could stop myself. I haven't seen him, the man said. Just heard him. Smelled him. A pause. Then, he smells like wet dirt. Like when you dig too deep in the yard. My stomach turned. I typed every variation of the address I could think of. Every county over. Every misspelling. Nothing. Then, faintly from his end of the call, a voice. Not his. It was deep, slow, like the words had to crawl out of its throat. You shouldn't be down there. The man on the line sucked in a sharp breath. I could hear his palm cover the phone, his breathing muffled. But I still heard it, soft scraping sounds, closer now, directly over where he must have been lying. Sir, I said quickly, is there another way out of the crawl space? He didn't answer. The sound above him stopped. Then came the quietest noise yet, like someone tapping the wood right above his head. Once, twice, 3 times. I could see his fingers, the man whispered, voice breaking. There. The call cut out. Just like that. No click. No fade. Just gone. I stared at the dead line for a full minute, waiting for him to call back, willing the system to refresh with a new ping location. Nothing. My supervisor ran a trace. No record of the call. Not even a log that the line had been used in the last hour. But I remember the sound of that breathing, the slow drag of whatever was moving above him, and the way he said wet dirt, like he'd smelled it before. I told myself he was a crank caller, that he made the whole thing up. But I couldn't shake it. The GPS didn't show a forest or a field where he said he was. It showed nothing. A flat black patch where no roads, no houses, no anything existed. Except, while I looked closer, just for a second, I could swear I saw a tiny white dot in the middle of that black square. No label. No name. Just there. And for some reason, the sight of it made me think of breathing, that I didn't move my headset away from my ear for a full 5 seconds after he said it. She's right above me. It came out of him in this dry, breathless tone, like he was trying not to breathe too loud, trying not to disturb something that could hear him. I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath too until the air burned in my chest. I forced myself to speak calmly, to keep my voice low, even though I knew he couldn't actually hear me the way you hear someone in the same room. Sir, when you say right above you, do you mean in the ceiling? There was a pause, a tiny sound of shifting fabric. His whisper came back so faint I almost thought I imagined it. She's not moving anymore. She's just lying there. I can feel it. Feel it. I asked before I could stop myself. She's pressing down. He swallowed, the sound of his throat tight in my ear. Not a lot, just enough that I can feel the weight. Like she's listening. I glanced at my screen again, hoping some miracle update had dropped an address into our system. But the location still didn't exist. Just a blinking call timer, climbing toward the 10-minute mark. Sir, I need you to tell me again exactly where you are. This time, he sounded almost irritated. I told you. Basement crawl space under the kitchen. The floor's wood. She's right on top of it. Right on top of me. You can't get that wrong. I pressed my pen to the desk, without realizing I'd been holding it. My notes were messy, like I'd been writing with my left hand. The words crawl space, pressing down, weight filled half the page. Somewhere behind me, I heard chairs creak, the night shift talking low, like they could feel something was wrong, even without hearing the call. Sir, I said, is there a door to the crawl space you can reach? He didn't answer at first. Just more silence, except, I heard it then. It was so faint I thought it might be static, but it wasn't. It was a breath. Not his. High up in the register, softer than paper tearing. A long, drawn-out inhale like someone leaning down toward the phone mic from a distance. "Do you hear?" he whispered suddenly. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, and I didn't want to confirm it. "I need you to stay calm," I said, though my own voice betrayed a tremor. "Help is on the way." "No, it's not," he interrupted sharply. "You don't know where I am." I froze. My cursor blinked in the address field. Still blank. "That's not true," I lied. "We have." "She knows you don't know." His voice cracked on the last word. "She's whispering it to me, telling me you're not coming." I didn't want to hear more, but I had to. "What is she saying exactly?" He went silent again, but it wasn't really silence. Somewhere, right at the edge of the line, I could hear shapes of words. Muffled syllables, like someone speaking through a layer of fabric. Too soft to make out, but just loud enough for my brain to start filling in guesses. I turned on my headset volume. The sound swelled, just a fraction, like whatever, was whispering knew I was listening now, too. "She says," his voice trailed, like he was struggling to repeat it. "She says I shouldn't move, that she's been here a long time, that she was here before me." He started breathing faster, little stuttered inhales. "She says she's going to stay until it's dark." "It is dark," I said without thinking. That's when I realized something. The man's line had a faint background hum, like the noise you get from a fluorescent bulb in a quiet room. But it didn't match the way a basement should sound. No echo. No hollow resonance. It felt closed. Too closed. "Sir, how big is this crawl space?" I asked. He let out a shaky laugh. "Big enough for me to get in. Not big enough for me to get out without her hearing." I could picture him, curled on his side in some coffin-sized space, the boards of the kitchen floor inches above his head, dust sticking to his face, trying not to cough. "Why did you go in there in the first place?" This time, his answer came fast, like he'd been waiting for me to ask. "Because I heard her before." My pen stopped moving. "What do you mean before?" 2 nights ago. I woke up. It was 3 in the morning. I heard something dragging across the floor, like knees, but slow, and I thought it was my wife, except he hesitated, breath catching. "She's been gone for 6 years. I pressed my lips together, feeling my mouth go dry. Gone could mean a lot of things, but the way he said it told me exactly what kind. "I didn't go looking that night," he said. "I just listened, and it stopped. But last night it came back. Closer. So tonight, I thought I'd wait in here to see if it was, I don't know, rats, pipes, anything but." He stopped mid-sentence. "Sir." "She moved," he whispered. I didn't even have to ask how he knew. The change in the sound told me. A slow, almost imperceptible shift, like something dragging itself an inch at a time across wood. "She's turning." His voice was barely air now. "Her head's facing me." The whispering grew sharper in my headset. I could still barely make out the words, but the cadence was there, the rhythm of language without the meaning. It made my skin crawl because my brain wanted to understand, like there was something important being said that I couldn't quite catch. Then his breathing stopped entirely. I thought the line had dropped. "Sir." "Shoo." It was so sudden and forceful that I froze, even though I was half a building away from him. His voice broke. "She's putting her mouth against the floor." The sound changed. The whispering was now pressed right into the wood above him, and somehow it came through the phone louder, more distinct. I heard my own name, not his, mine. It was the only word I understood, but hearing it felt wrong in a way I can't explain, like it had been taken out of my head without my permission and given back in the wrong voice. The man started sobbing quietly, trying to keep it in. "She knows you. She knows you." I didn't know what to say. "Sir," I forced out, "you need to stay as quiet as possible. Don't talk to her." But he did. Or maybe she did. The line blurred. The sound from above him shifted again, a faint scraping. "She's opening something," he said. "What do you mean opening something?" "She's lifting the boards. Just enough to." The line filled with a hollow, wooden pop. Air moved differently on his end now. "She's looking," he breathed. "I can see one of her eyes." I gripped my pen so hard I thought it would break. "It's not human," he said, choking back another sob. "It's—" The call cut out. No beep. No drop signal. Just absence. My headset went dead. The address field still blinked empty. And in the reflection of my darkened monitor, For half a second, I thought I saw movement above my own head that I couldn't sleep after that call. Even when I went home, showered, tried to eat something, my head kept circling back to his voice. That strained, shaking way he said it. She's right above me. I replayed it in my mind, trying to picture his surroundings, trying to put myself there. The sound he described, the way it stopped right over him, and the whispering. That whisper. He'd said it wasn't words exactly, more like breath that wanted to be words. I've handled a lot of bad calls, but this one had a weight to it, something that clung to me. When my shift started the next night, I walked in early. I had this plan in my head. I'd dig through the system, find the exact location from his call, and get closure. The problem was the system still said it didn't exist. Not no such address because of a typo. Not invalid because of missing data. It was just absent, like someone had erased it. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, partly because it was against policy to dig into calls without a direct assignment. Mostly because I didn't want them looking at me the way they look at the rookies who can't let go of a case. I didn't want them thinking I was soft. I searched the county database first. Nothing. Then I thought, maybe it was an old building with a different number. Some addresses get renumbered when neighborhoods change. I dug into the archive files. Still nothing. But when I switched over to the city planning records, that's when I saw it. The address existed. Not in any modern system, but buried in scanned blueprints from decades ago. The drawings were old, hand-labeled, yellowed with age. They showed a single, two-story structure on a dead-end road. Not a house exactly. It was marked Unit 6 storage in bold pencil strokes, but the floor plan was strange. The bottom floor had what looked like a large open room with a single interior column. The second floor had no stairs drawn, just a narrow hall running along the perimeter of the building. No staircase, no ladder, no elevator, just a hallway floating above an open space. And right in the middle of the bottom floor was a shaded rectangle labeled, "Crawl space access, do not enter." I stared at that note for a long time. The handwriting didn't match the rest of the blueprint, like it had been added later by someone else. And then I noticed the demolition stamp in the corner. Structure removed, 1978. So the building had been gone for over 40 years. Which means that man, where the hell had he been calling from? I zoomed in on the scan, looking for street names. The blueprint showed a road, faint, winding, and at the end, a small circle like a cul-de-sac. The name next to it was Old Wren Road. I never heard of it. I pulled up a modern map of the county. No Old Wren Road. But when I overlaid the old street plan from the blueprints onto the current satellite view, I swear my stomach tightened. The place where the building used to be was just empty land now. A clearing in the middle of overgrown trees, far from any paved road. That's when I realized something else. The phone number he called from. I checked the call log again. It wasn't a cell. It wasn't a landline in our database either. It was listed only as unknown source. The kind of reading you get from a blocked or scrambled number. I sat back in my chair and rubbed my face. I could have stopped there. I should have stopped there. But my brain wouldn't let me. I needed to hear the call again. I found the audio file in the system. As soon as I clicked play, I felt that same tightness in my chest. The line clicked. My own voice. 911, what's your emergency? A pause. Then the man's voice, shaking, breathless. She's still up there. I don't know how she's moving without falling. I listened closer, but instead of focusing on him, I focused on the background this time. There was breathing, his heavy and uneven, but beneath it, something else. At first, I thought it was static, but it rose and fell too smoothly, like it had rhythm. And then, right as he said, "She's right above me," I heard it. A faint creak, a groan of wood, then a whisper. I replayed that section over and over. I turned up the volume, filtered out some of the background noise. And with each replay, the whisper sounded more deliberate, like it was curling toward the mic. It didn't sound like words in English. It didn't even sound like language in the way we understand it. But it was aimed. I stopped the recording, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, my pulse too loud in my ears. It was almost midnight when I printed out the blueprint and folded it into my bag. I told myself I was just curious, that maybe I'd drive past the area tomorrow on my day off, just to see if anything was there. But part of me already knew. I wasn't just looking anymore. I was going. The next day, the weather was cold enough that my breath clouded in front of me. The kind of air that makes sound carry strangely far. I followed the modern roads as close as I could to where Old Wren Road used to be. Eventually, the pavement ended at a chain-link fence with a faded "No Trespassing" sign. Beyond it was a narrow trail, half swallowed by weeds. I shouldn't have crossed it, but the fence was bent low in one corner, and it looked like something or someone had gone through not long ago. The trail was quiet except for the crunch of my boots. No birds, no wind. The deeper I went, the more it felt like the air itself was pressing against me. After maybe 20 minutes, I reached it. A clearing, just like on the map. But it wasn't empty. The foundation was still there, cracked concrete, moss growing between the lines, but the air above it seemed wrong. Like it was holding the outline of the building, even though nothing was there. I walked slowly to the center, my boots scuffing the pale concrete. My eyes kept drifting upward, expecting to see a second floor that didn't exist anymore. That's when I noticed the square in the middle. A wooden hatch. It looked out of place, too new compared to the rest of the ruins. The wood was dark and damp, but the metal latch had barely any rust. And in the silence of that clearing, I thought I heard breathing. Not loud, not even close, but deep and steady, like someone exhaling into a pillow. I crouched, my hand hovering over the hatch. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, to get back on the trail and never come here again. But my curiosity, it was louder. When I leaned closer, I thought I heard something else. Not quite whispering, not quite moving, but whatever it was beneath me. The same place that man had been. I stood so fast I almost tripped. I backed away from the hatch, my pulse pounding, my eyes scanning the edges of the clearing. There was nothing here. There was no one here. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I stayed 1 second longer, something under that hatch would know exactly where I was. I turned and walked quickly back to the trail, not looking over my shoulder. But even after I reached my car, even after I drove away, I kept imagining what that man must have felt, laying there in the dark, knowing something was directly above him, whispering. And now, I think I know why his address didn't exist. It wasn't just that the building was gone. It's that whatever's in that crawl space doesn't belong to any map we've made. Not anymore. When the first responder said it out loud, I didn't believe him. There is nothing here. I thought he meant no building, no sign of a break-in, maybe an address typo. But then he followed up, and his voice had this tight, confused edge to it. I mean, there's nothing here, dispatch. It's an empty lot. I looked at the glowing address on my CAD screen. Same coordinates, same spot I'd been staring at for the last 20 minutes. The man on the other end of my line, the one who'd told me someone was crawling above him, was still talking. I could hear him breathing. I could hear him panicking. I could even hear him cry. And according to the officers standing exactly where the call was supposed to be coming from, there wasn't a single wall in sight. Just a dirt field. Unit 4, confirm location, I said, trying to sound steady. You're at. I read the numbers aloud. They matched. Confirmed, he said. The man in my ear gasped. They're outside. It startled me, because there was no way he could know that. I hadn't said anything about responders. I hadn't even mentioned police. How do you know that? I asked. His whisper was sharp. I can hear them. Through the wall. I stared at the phone, like maybe I'd see some trick my brain had missed. He wasn't on speaker. The line wasn't patched through. There was no wall. And yet, somewhere behind him, no, above him, I heard that faint movement again. The same dragging, weight-shifting sound from before. Only slower now. Almost deliberate. He whimpered. She's moving again. The officer's voice cut in, low and uneasy. Dispatch. There's no building here. I'm standing in a patch of mud. I almost told him I could hear the caller breathing in real time. I could hear the scrape of knees on wood, the shift of weight. But I bit it back. You can't just say that to a cop standing in the dark. Instead, I asked the caller something I should have asked earlier. Sir, can you tell me how you got there? His answer didn't come right away. For a few seconds, it was just his breathing in mine. Then, I woke up here. My stomach turned. You woke up? I don't know where I was before. I don't. He choked, cutting himself off. She stopped. That quiet stretched out, thicker than before. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I heard the next sound. A whisper. It wasn't coming from him. It wasn't even coming from the same spot in the room. It was above, and it was saying something over and over. I pressed my headset tighter. My ears strained. The words were muffled, as if they were leaking through boards, but I could make out a rhythm. Not English. Not anything I recognized. My throat was dry. "Sir, can you tell me what she's saying?" He didn't answer. I thought maybe the line had gone dead. Then I realized he was copying her. His voice matched hers. Same tone, same alien syllables. "Sir," my voice cracked, but he just kept repeating it. That's when the officer's voice came back. He was still out on the lot, still shining his flashlight into emptiness. "Dispatch." I swear to God, I can hear him. I froze. He was whispering now, too, like the caller. "Through the ground," he said. "It's like it's under me." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel in my teeth. 2 places at once. That didn't make sense. And yet, both voices, the caller in my ear and the officer on the radio, were describing the same sound. The same place. I told the officer to hold position. I told the caller not to move. Neither listened. The caller started crying again. "She's coming down." "Where?" I demanded. "Through the wall." The officer muttered something I almost didn't catch. "There's no wall." But I swear in the silence that followed, I could hear it. A hollow, wooden creak, like weight shifting from beam to beam. And then, closer, knuckles dragging down a surface that shouldn't exist. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was instinct, maybe desperation. I leaned toward my mic and said, "Sir, can you hear my voice?" "Yes." "If you can walk toward it, follow it." He didn't respond right away. I pictured him frozen in some dark crawl space, trying to decide if the stranger in his ear was safer than whatever waited above him. The officer's voice broken again. "Dispatch, he's here." "What?" I blurted. But the caller's voice came over my headset at the exact same time. "I see you." It was impossible. The officer swore under his breath. I heard footsteps on grass. Then his radio went dead. The caller didn't hang up. He just started laughing. Not loud, not manic, just soft. The way someone laughs when they're trying not to cry. "She's right," he whispered. "About what?" I asked. "That you'll never find me." The line cut. I sat there, staring at the empty Call Idaho field with a dead hum of silence in my ears. They searched that lot for 3 hours. Dug shallow pits in the dirt. Walked the perimeter until their flashlights burned dim. Nothing. No footprints. No tools. No disturbed ground. When the sun came up, the mud steamed under the morning light, and the only thing left was a set of rusted pipes half buried near the center. One of the newer officers, just trying to make conversation, asked if maybe the man had been calling from underground. But even that didn't make sense. The pipes were capped. The recording stayed with me. I listened to it over and over in the weeks after. It didn't matter that the official report called it a location error. It didn't matter that they marked it as unresolved and buried it under other, louder emergencies. What mattered, what I couldn't stop hearing, was the whisper. Because when I slowed the audio down, when I looped it just right, it wasn't nonsense anymore. It was my name. It started like any other shift. The kind of night where the hum of the fluorescent lights in the dispatch room feels louder than the voices on the radio. We were running skeleton staff, 2 of us for the entire county, so every sound felt sharper, every second heavier. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway, just to have something to do with my hands. The clock on the wall read 2:52 a.m., and I remember thinking how dead everything felt. No chatter on the channels, no movement on the scanners. Then the line rang. Not the non-emergency line, the line. I put the headset on. "County 911, what's your emergency?" The man's voice came in fast, like he'd been holding it in too long. "Fire," he said. "There's a fire. It's in the living room. Please, you have to hurry." His breathing was ragged, like he was choking on smoke. I could hear this low crackling in the background, wood popping, the muffled roar of flames. "Okay, sir, I need your address." He rattled it off. Quiet little road on the south side, near the tree line. I knew it. Sparse houses, no hydrants for miles. "Is everyone out of the house?" "My wife, his voice broke. "She's still inside. I can't find her. She was just..." And then there was a crash, and he started coughing hard. The kind of cough that rips something loose inside your chest. I went into autopilot, gave the call to fire, put EMS on standby, gave him instructions, get low, cover his face, try to find an exit. I stayed on the line until I heard sirens faintly in the distance. He kept saying her name, over and over. The call ended at 2:57 a.m. 15 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same line, same tone. I answered. County 911, what's your... Fire, the man said. I froze. It wasn't just the same voice, it was the exact same words, in the exact same way. There's a fire. It's in the living room. Please, you have to hurry. The crackle was there too. The popping wood. The muffled roar. Sir, can you give me your address? I asked, already knowing what he'd say. And he did. Same address. Same road. Same urgency. Is everyone out of the house? I asked. My wife, his voice broke. She's still inside. I can't find her. She was just the same crash. The same coughing. Word for word. I didn't even realize my hand was gripping the desk until I felt my nails digging into the wood. This time I didn't patch him through to fire. They were already there. In fact, the radio was still chattering about them being on scene, still fighting it. The last I'd heard, they hadn't found anyone yet. So I sat there, listening to him live the same moment again. And again, it ended with him saying her name. I didn't tell anyone right away. Part of me thought maybe I'd zoned out, misheard, filled in blanks with what I'd just taken. That happens sometimes. You get calls so similar they blur together. But there was something about this that didn't feel like a blur. It felt recorded. Except it wasn't. I checked. I even pulled up the instant playback log while the second call was still fresh in my headset. They were two separate incoming calls, 15 minutes apart. The number matched too. Same exact caller ID. I didn't want to admit it, but my gut told me that wasn't possible. The guy was either still in the burning house or already pulled out by fire crews. Either way, he shouldn't have been calling me again, repeating the same sentences like some broken machine. When the fire chief called in at 3:18 a.m., I asked about the man. "We've got one fatality," he said. Male, mid-40s. Found near the back door. Smoke inhalation. The words hung in my ear like they weighed a ton. Did he have a phone on him? I asked. A pause. Yeah, why? No reason, I said quickly. But I knew. I knew before he even told me they'd pulled his phone from his pocket. Screen melted. The second call had come after he was already dead. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. I sat at my kitchen table staring at my own phone, like it might ring any second. I thought about calling the number back, but I didn't. I don't even know if it would have gone through. The next night, I told myself it was a one-off. Just something weird I'd never be able to explain. Dispatchers have those stories. Calls where you swear you heard something you shouldn't have. You chalk it up to stress, fatigue, bad lines. But then it happened again. Different call. Different voice. This time, it was a woman reporting a break-in. She was whispering, said she was hiding in her closet. I sent deputies out. Stayed on the line. Heard her gasp when the doorknob rattled. Heard her start to cry. We disconnected after she whispered. They're in the house. 14 minutes later, same call. Same whispers. Same words. Same gasps. I didn't patch it through the second time. Just sat there, listening, feeling my stomach turn over. When the deputy radioed in, he said the house was empty when they arrived. Doors locked. No sign of forced entry. By the third time it happened, I stopped trying to rationalize it. It was always the same pattern. The call came in. The emergency played out. The call ended. Exactly 15 minutes later, it came again, identical in every detail. And the worst part? The second call never changed the outcome. It wasn't like a second chance. It was just a replay, a moment stuck on repeat while the world moved forward without it. I started keeping track. Dates, times, call types. Every single one came back once, like an echo with perfect memory. One night, I finally told my partner on shift, Michelle. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me for a long time, her eyes flicking toward the phone like she didn't want to hear it ring. You know, she said, my old supervisor in the city told me about something like that. Said they called it a time slip. Like a piece of the past gets caught in a loop. Just plays itself over until it runs out. Runs out? I asked. She shrugged. That's the part he never explained. The calls didn't stop. If anything, they started happening more often. Different emergencies, different people, but always in that same perfect sequence. And every time I answered the repeat, I got this feeling in my chest, like if I just said the right thing, maybe I could break it. Maybe I could change what happened. But no matter what I tried, changing my tone, asking different questions, shouting into the headset, it never worked. They just kept going, trapped in that moment, saying the same words like they'd been branded into their lungs. I don't know if it's worse that they don't know they're repeating, or if they do and can't stop. Last night was the first time I heard my own voice. The line rang at 3:02 a.m. I picked up. County 911. What's your emergency? And then I heard me. Not just similar me. Same pitch. Same breathing. Even a little throat clear I do without thinking. County 911. What's your emergency? The voice said again. Only this time, there was no answer. Just the sound of my own voice looping over and over into dead air. I don't think this is just bad wiring. I think something's bleeding through, moment from a night that hasn't ended yet. And I'm starting to wonder if one night, the repeat won't come 15 minutes later. It'll come first. I didn't notice the clocks right away. At first, it was just a small, background thing, the kind of detail your brain ignores because it feels too ordinary to matter. We've been on edge ever since the fire call repeated itself earlier. The exact same call, same voice, same background noise. It had already shaken the floor out from under what I thought was normal. So, when I caught a glimpse of the clock above the radio rack, I didn't even think twice. 3:07 a.m. That's all it said. No big deal. It wasn't until maybe, 15, 20 minutes later, except it couldn't have been, not really, that I saw it again. Same position. Same second hand frozen mid-step, just hanging there like it was waiting for someone to push it along. I remember looking down at my computer screen, checking the digital time in the corner. 3:07. My phone, 3:07. Even the little green LED on the base of the dispatch console, the one that updates automatically from the server, read 3:07. That's when my stomach started to knot. I tried to think of something logical. Power glitch? Sure, maybe. But everything was still running fine. Calls were coming through. The lights hadn't flickered. We weren't on backup generators. And then Martin, the guy in the chair next to mine, muttered, "Is it me? Or has it been 3:07 for a while now?" That did it. That single moment where someone else saw it too. It wasn't my brain playing tricks. It wasn't just a sleepy misread of the clock. I turned toward him slowly, like moving too fast might shatter the thin ice we were standing on. "Yeah," I said. My voice cracked a little. "I noticed too." He glanced up at the big clock above the main floor. "That's not normal, right?" "No, not normal at all." But what could I say? The room was already tense from that earlier call. People were whispering between shifts, avoiding eye contact like kids who'd all seen something they weren't supposed to. And then the radio chirped again. A voice came through, panicked, breathless, reporting a fire. The same address as before. Same details. It was the call. The same one. Again, I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and for a few seconds, I just listened. The man's voice didn't just sound similar. It was the same. Every syllable, every breath break identical. Even a muffled crash in the background, the one I thought was debris falling, came at the exact same moment. I've been in dispatch long enough to know you could never get two calls exactly the same. People change their wording. They pause differently. Even if they rehearse, they breathe differently. But this, it was like hitting rewind and play on a recording. I logged the call because that's what protocol demanded, but my hands were shaking. When I looked back up, the wall clock still said 3:07. The rest of the shift should have been routine, but the air in the room felt different. Time wasn't moving. I know that sounds impossible, but if you've ever been in a waiting room for something bad, you'll know what I mean, that slow, thick kind of silence where you feel like the world outside has stopped. The difference here was no one's coffee cooled down. No one's computer auto-locked. And every single clock I checked, my watch, my phone, even the analog backup clock in the break room, was still frozen. At one point, I walked past the glass wall that looked out over the parking lot. I expected to see something, headlights passing, maybe a gust of wind shaking the streetlight cables. But everything was still. I mean, perfectly still. The streetlight outside was bent slightly from an old windstorm and had always swayed a little. But it wasn't moving. Not an inch. Martin tried to break the tension. He laughed under his breath and said, "Guess we're stuck in hell's night shift." I didn't laugh, because I kept thinking about the man on the other end of that fire call, the first one and the second one. If time wasn't moving, if we were caught in whatever this was he still screaming somewhere? Still running for his life in some endless loop? I didn't want to think about it, but my brain kept replaying his voice. That desperate rasp, the way it cracked when he shouted for help, the way the background sound, that awful roar of flames, cut through the line. I had heard fear before. This was something else. It wasn't fear of dying. It was fear of never escaping. About what should have been an hour later, but the clock still read 3:07. Things got worse. My console phone lit up again. Same number. Same caller ID. I answered, my voice shaking. 911, what's your... And he was there. Same voice. Same exact words as the first 2 times. I could almost recite them with him. Help. Oh God, it's in the walls. The crash. The choking. The heat in his voice. Like he was standing in the middle of it all. It wasn't just at the time it stopped. It was that he was trapped inside it. The others were starting to notice patterns too. Cynthia, one of the overnight supervisors, walked in holding her mug of tea. She looked pale. "I just burned my tongue," she said quietly. "But it's still too hot to drink. I don't think it's cooling down." Someone else muttered about their pen ink not drying on a form they'd filled out half an hour ago. It was like every little process that marked time, cooling, drying, ticking, had just stopped. We tried calling out to other stations, but the lines were dead. Not busy, not disconnected, just nothing. Dead air. I pulled out my phone and tried to send a message to my sister. It sat on, sending forever. By what should have been 4 in the morning, my eyes were starting to sting from the fluorescent lights. I would have given anything for the relief of the clock flipping forward, even at 3:08. But never did, and the calls didn't stop. Every 15 minutes, or what felt like 15 minutes, the same man, the same screams, the same fire. I knew the pattern so well that I could feel the moment before it rang. And every time, I answered. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I changed something, if I interrupted him, or told him we were coming, it would break the loop. But it never did. If I spoke over him, his voice still rolled on as if I hadn't said a word, like a track playing over static. I kept looking at the clock, and eventually I started to wonder if I was doing it to reassure myself it was still there. That maybe if I looked away too long, it would vanish, and we'd be left with nothing. And then a thought hit me. What if time wasn't just stuck? What if it had broken? What if we weren't waiting for 3:08? What if 3:08 was never coming? The scariest part wasn't the calls, or the stillness outside, or even the way my tea stayed the same temperature for hours. It was the thought that maybe, somewhere in this frozen slice of night, there were others, people screaming into phones, people trapped in burning houses, people begging for help, and we'd never reach them. Because maybe we'd never reach anything again. By the 5th identical call, Martin wouldn't even look at his console anymore. He just sat with his head in his hands, muttering, "I can't do it again. I can't listen to it again." I told him I'd take it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear it. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that it was real. I picked up and there he was. Same words, same breath, same fire. Only this time, at the very end, there was something else. A pause. A faint sound like footsteps on wood. And then, almost too quiet to catch, a voice that wasn't his. Right next to the phone. It whispered, "You're still here." I didn't tell anyone about that part. Not then. Not yet. Because I wasn't sure if it was real, or if it was just the first sign that my mind was slipping with the rest of the world. And still, the clocks read 3:07. I don't know why I kept glancing at the clock. Maybe because it was the only thing in the room that felt wrong enough to anchor me. The red numbers on the wall, the big digital one above the map board, were still stuck at 3:07 a.m. They'd been stuck for over an hour. Except it wasn't really over an hour. Not on paper. Not on the wall. Not anywhere. And still, the phones kept ringing. They weren't frantic. Not yet. But there was no pause between them anymore. One would stop, and another would pick up like they were passing the sound back and forth. Half the lights in dispatch were out. Not burned out, just dead. The glow from the monitors painted the desks in blue, and the shadows between the cubicles felt heavier, like the air was thicker there. Check outside again, I told Mallory. My voice cracked when I said it. Please. She looked at me like she didn't want to, like she already knew what she'd find. But she went anyway, pushing the crash bar on the side door and stepping into the night. I stayed by the board, headset crooked against my ear, one line open but muted. It wasn't until she came back that I realized I'd been holding my breath. Her face was pale, even under the flickering overhead. There's no one, she said. No cars. No wind. No, she stopped, swallowed. It's just empty. I already knew it. I could feel it through the glass. The kind of stillness that makes your ears ring because there's nothing left to hear. We're a 24-hour dispatch center. There's always something outside. A drunk walking home. A semi growling past on the highway. A delivery truck. But this felt like the world had been scrubbed clean. The phone on my console lit up again. I didn't even have to look at the ID to know what it was. Line 4, I said to Mallory. She shook her head. I'm not answering it. The ringing burrowed into my head, steady, patient. I pressed the line open. 911. What's your emergency? There was breathing on the other end. Slow, shallow. Then, the same voice I'd heard earlier tonight, the fire call. Word for word, tone for tone. There's smoke. I think it's in the walls. Oh God, I can't. I mouthed the words as he said them, because I already knew what came next. Every pause, every choke in his throat. It wasn't just the same call. It was the call. I let him finish before I said anything. My knuckles were white on the receiver. Sir, we've sent. Click. He hung up exactly when he had the first time. Mallory whispered, 15 minutes. She was wrong. I checked my watch, a cheap analog one I kept in my locker, the only clock in the building that wasn't digital. The second hand wasn't moving. It wasn't 15 minutes later. It wasn't any minutes later. We were still at 3:07. Mallory stared at me like I had the answer, like I could fix it, but I couldn't even feel my own heartbeat. Not on my chest, not on my neck. It was like my body had forgotten how to keep time too. Somewhere down the hall, a desk phone started ringing. Not a dispatch line, one of the internal ones. The sound was duller, muffled by the carpeted walls. I got up, even though my legs didn't want to carry me. My shoes felt heavier than they should. The phone was on in the records office, sitting on a desk no one had used in years. Its little green light blinked at me. I lifted the receiver. Nothing. Not static, not a voice. Just nothing. The ringing started again, but not from that phone. From another one, deeper in the building. It was like the sound was moving, skipping from phone to phone, getting farther away each time. Mallory's voice came from the doorway behind me. It's in the lobby now. I turned. She was pointing down the hall toward the glass front doors. The phone out there was shrill in the silence. The kind of ring that made the hair on your arms stand up. I walked toward it, slow, every step too loud on the tile. When I picked it up, there was no dial tone. No click, just the same man's voice. The fire. The smoke in the walls. He was crying this time. Not in the original call. This was new. I can't get out. Where are you? I asked. My voice was shaking so bad the headset nearly slipped. He stopped, like someone had pressed pause. Then his breathing slowed, became mechanical again, and he started from the beginning. There's smoke. I think it's in the walls. I set the phone down without hanging up. His voice kept going, tinny through the plastic, spilling into the empty lobby. Mallory wouldn't come any closer. She just stood there, watching me like I might shatter. Do you hear that? I asked her. She nodded. It's not just a call. It's everything. It's all the same. I didn't understand. She gestured to the street beyond the glass. Look, I stepped to the doors. The parking lot was lit only by the orange glow of our sign. Beyond that, darkness. No moon, no stars. The streetlights along Main were frozen mid-flicker, like someone had snapped a photograph in the middle of their stutter. And in the distance, across the intersection, I could see a single car. It was parked sideways, hazard lights flashing in perfect, mechanical rhythm. Flash. Pause. Flash. Pause. I counted. Every pause was the same length as the rings of the phone. My mouth was dry. I didn't realize I'd pressed my forehead to the glass until it fogged beneath my breath. When I pulled back, the fog stayed. It didn't fade. Mallory whispered behind me, "I think we're stuck." I turned. Her eyes weren't on me. They were on the reflection in the glass. I followed her gaze. In the reflection, we weren't moving. Two frozen figures in dispatch uniforms, standing shoulder to shoulder. But I could still feel my own breathing. I could still hear the phones. The reflection didn't match the sound. I stepped away from the door, and the frozen me stayed behind, head tilted, mouth just slightly open like he was about to speak. Mallory swore under her breath. The ringing stopped, and then every phone in the building lit up at once. I didn't know which to answer. My chest felt tight, like choosing wrong would do something permanent. Mallory reached for the closest one, line 2, and I grabbed her wrist before she could. But it was too late. The moment her fingers brushed the receiver, all the phones went silent. The room was empty again. The only sound left was the ticking of the wall clock. Except, it was ticking backward. That it's strange how quickly you can lose track of time. Not just minutes, not hours. Whole years. At first, I thought it was exhaustion. You work night shifts long enough, the hours start to smear together. One day bleeds into the next. You wake up unsure if it's Thursday or Sunday. But this was something else. It's still 3:07 a.m. It's always 3:07 a.m. The phones ring. We answer them. The calls repeat. We hang up. The phones ring again. It's like some invisible hand keeps winding the same second back, forcing us to live it over and over. I don't remember the last sunrise. The first week, or what I thought was a week, I kept track on a scrap of paper. Little tally marks in the margin. 7 lines. Then 14. Then 21. Somewhere around 30, I stopped. The tallies didn't mean anything anymore. I've had the same cup of coffee for, God, I don't know. I keep picking it up, taking a sip, and setting it down. It's always lukewarm, like it's been sitting for 20 minutes. I've never seen steam rising from it. Once, I left it on the counter just to see if it would change. Maybe grow cold. Maybe spoil. But every time I checked, it was the same, half full, the faint taste of burnt beans clinging to the rim. The others don't talk about it much. At first we did. We argued. We tried to figure it out, to explain it. Now we just exist in it. Janice sits 2 desks over. She doesn't even pretend to look at the clock anymore. She keeps her headset on, staring at nothing, her lips moving like she's still talking to someone. Maybe she is. Maybe in her head, she's still answering real calls. Roger doesn't shave. He used to be clean-cut every night. Now his beard's thick, patchy in places, but it never grows past a certain point. I think he's noticed. He doesn't say anything about it. Outside, the streets stay empty. The sky stays dark. Sometimes, I see snow on the ground. Sometimes it's wet like it just rained. But it never happens in front of me. There's no falling snow, no raindrops, no wind. Just changes. Like someone rearranges the set when we're not looking. The only constant is the ringing phone. Last night, or maybe it was months ago, something in me snapped. I decided I was going to break the loop. I waited for the phone to ring. It was the same fire call as always. I didn't pick up. I let it ring. At first, I thought maybe the loop would stall. Maybe we'd finally move forward. But the ringing just got louder and louder. I covered my ears. I shouted at the others. Don't answer it. Just let it go. They didn't look at me. The sound drilled into my skull. It felt like it was shaking the air, rattling my teeth. My vision started to blur. And finally I gave in. I picked up the receiver. It was the same man, the same panic, the same words in the same order, right down to the way his breath caught between syllables. And when I hung up, the room was exactly as it had been before. 3:07 a.m. That's when I realized something. It's not a loop in time. It's me. It's us. We're stuck in the same second, but we're still moving inside it. Changing, wearing down, decaying. Which means we've been in this second for a very, very long time. I don't know how long. I don't want to know. Sometimes I get flashes. Memories that don't belong to me. I'll be sitting at my desk, and suddenly I'm somewhere else, standing in the middle of an empty road, holding the phone to my ear. Or lying in bed, the same second looping, the same noise outside. Once I saw myself walking through the dispatch center. Only it wasn't me now. It was me years from now, thin, hollow-eyed, my skin papery and gray. My steps were slow, dragging. And when I looked into my own eyes, there was nothing there. No thought, just movement. Like I'd forgotten what I was. I think about that version of me a lot. I think I'm becoming him. The others are too. Roger mumbles in his sleep now, head on his desk. Janice's lips are cracked, bleeding, but she doesn't seem to notice. I haven't seen her blink in days, if you can call them days. Last time I went outside, I walked for what felt like hours. But every street led me back here. Every turn, every alley, somehow, circle me back to the front doors of the dispatch building. I don't think there's a world beyond this anymore. Maybe there never was. I used to have a sister. At least I think I did. Her face comes to me, sometimes blurry at the edges. I try to remember her voice, but it's like trying to recall a dream that's slipping away. If I don't think about her constantly, she fades. I think she might already be gone. Tonight, if you can call it that, the phones have been quieter. The fire call still comes, but in between, there's silence. Not just the kind you can hear, but the kind you can feel. Heavy, thick, like the air is pressing down on you. The second is breaking down. I can feel it. The walls seem further apart than they used to be. The lights flicker in slow, uneven patterns. The ceiling tiles ripple when I look too long. And the clock, God, the clock. It's still at 3:07 a.m., but the second hand, it's trembling, like it's fighting to move. I think I'm close to the last second. I don't know what happens after that. Maybe it starts over. Maybe it finally ends. Maybe we end with it. I keep telling myself I'll know when it's time. I'll feel it. But the truth is, I'm terrified. I don't remember how old I was when I came here. I don't know how long I've been sitting at this desk. I can't remember the last time I touched sunlight. And when the phone rings now, I don't hesitate. I answer, because that's all there is. The sound of the caller's voice, the heat in their panic, the words I could recite in my sleep. That's my heartbeat now. Everything else is gone. I used to think there would be a moment, some obvious shift, where the second would tick forward and we'd be free. But what if the second never ends? What if it's been ending slowly for years, and this is what the end looks like? The trembling hand on the clock. The slow decay of memory. The silence between rings. I think the last second isn't something you reach. I think it's something that swallows you whole, bit by bit, until there's nothing left to move forward. And maybe that's already happened. Maybe we've been in the last second all along. When you're new at a job, you spend the first few months pretending you're busier than you are. That's what I was doing that night. It was my second month on night shift at the county dispatch center. The place was quiet, quieter than I'd ever heard it. No calls, no chatter from the other operators. Just the hum of the overhead lights and the distant rumble of an old AC unit that never seemed to shut off. I'd already organized my desk twice, rearranged my pens, wiped the monitor like it mattered. Then I started exploring. There's a little storage room in the back of the building. Most of the time, the door is kept shut, but the lock's been broken for years. Everyone calls it the graveyard because it's where all the old records, busted radios, and outdated training manuals go to rot. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just an excuse to stretch my legs. The smell hit first. Dust, paper, and that faint tang of mildew that clings to things left alone too long. There were metal shelves on either side, stacked with cardboard boxes marked in black marker. 2012, Animal Control, 2008, Storm Response, 2015, non-emergency calls. I was halfway down the aisle when I noticed a box on the floor. No label, no date, just a plain, beat-up cardboard box with one corner crushed in. I don't know why that bothered me. Maybe because everything else was labeled, logged, and filed away in neat rows. This didn't belong. I knelt down and brushed a layer of dust off the lid. It left streaks on my fingers. The tape holding it shut had gone brittle, peeling away without much effort. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens of them. No cases, no markings, just black plastic shells with blank spools of brown ribbon coiled inside. I picked one up, turned it over my hands. The little window in the middle showed the tape wound unevenly, like it had been stopped mid-play. Something about it made my stomach twist. Nobody at dispatch uses cassettes anymore. Hasn't for decades. The official archive is digital. Calls are logged, time-stamped, and stored on secure servers. These shouldn't exist. I stood there for a long minute, staring into the box, trying to decide if I should bring it up to my supervisor. But curiosity won. There's an old player in the training room. I'd seen it before, a clunky gray thing with yellow buttons and a built-in speaker. Probably hadn't been used since before I was in high school. I carried the box out like it was heavier than it was. Maybe it was. The training room was empty. I set the box on the table and grabbed the player from the corner. The cord was stiff, curling in strange shapes from being wrapped up so long. It took a few tries to get it plugged in. The red power light flickered, then held steady. I picked a tape at random. It clicked into place with a soft, mechanical snap. I pressed play. For a few seconds, there was nothing, just the low hiss of static. Then a man's voice came through, low and shaky. "Man, hello? Is this 911? A woman's voice answered. I didn't recognize it. "Operator, this is emergency dispatch. What's your location?" "Man, I don't know. I think I'm lost. It's dark. There aren't any lights anywhere." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't just fear, it was confusion. Like he was describing something that didn't make sense even to him. "Operator, sir, can you see any landmarks? Signs? Anything that could help me pinpoint where you are?" "Man, no. I can hear something, though. Behind me." There was a pause. Then a sound. Faint but distinct. Like someone breathing into the line. "Man, it's closer now." The call cut off. No click, no hang up. Just silence. Then the tape stopped itself with a heavy clunk. I sat there, staring at the machine. My hands felt cold. Old calls can be disturbing. People die on the phone sometimes, where you hear things you can't unhear. But this was different. This wasn't in our system. I would have heard about it during training. I reached for another tape. This one started mid-conversation. A teenage boy, voice trembling. "Boy, I can see her again. She's closer this time." "Operator, who's closer?" "Boy," the woman. "The one for before." "Operator, before when?" "Boy, don't you remember? I told you last night." There was a scraping noise, like a chair being dragged across the floor. Then the boy whispered, "Boy, she's right outside." A deep, rhythmic knocking came through the line. 3 knocks, then silence. 3 knocks, then silence. The operator's voice was calm, but I could hear the tension under it. "Operator, stay on the line with me. I'm sending someone out." "Boy, you already did." The call ended. By the 3rd tape, my hand was shaking. I told myself I'd only listen to one more, but when that one finished, I reached for another. And another. Every call was different, but they all had something in common. None of them were in our official records. None of them had clear endings. And all of them sounded wrong. Not wrong in a technical way. Wrong in a human way. Like the voices were coming from people who weren't supposed to be calling. I lost track of time. Could have been 20 minutes. Could have been 2 hours. The training room felt smaller the longer I sat there, the air heavier. I kept telling myself I'd stop after the next tape. But every time I pressed stop, my fingers went right back to play. One tape in particular stuck with me. It began with the sound of wind. No voices, no background noise, just that low, constant rush, like a microphone held outside a moving car. Then faintly a voice. It was so quiet, I had to lean in to hear it. "Voice, can you hear me?" I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. The tone was flat, almost monotone. "Voice, you shouldn't have found these." A burst of static filled the speaker, sharp enough to make me flinch. When it cleared, there was just the wind again. Then nothing. The tape kept spinning for another full minute before the machine stopped it. I don't remember putting the box back in storage. I must have, because when my shift ended, it was gone from the training room. But I do remember walking past the wall clock on my way out. It was 3:07 a.m. exactly. I didn't think much of it at the time. That night, I dreamed about the box. In the dream, it wasn't in the storage room. It was under my desk. The lid was gone, and the tapes had spilled out across the floor, unwinding themselves in long ribbons of brown. They were whispering, not words I could understand, just low, overlapping murmurs. While I bent down to pick one up, the plastic was warm, almost hot. I woke up with my heart racing. My clock read 3:07 a.m. The next shift, I try not to think about it. Calls came in, I did my job, hours passed. But around the middle of the night, I found myself drifting back toward the storage room. The box wasn't where I'd left it. It was on the table in the training room. The lid was open, and sitting on top of the pile of tapes was one I hadn't seen before. It was red. No cassette I'd ever seen was red. There was no label, no writing, nothing to say where it came from. Just that strange, glossy red plastic. I told myself I wouldn't play it. I told myself I'd throw it away. Instead, I picked it up and slid into the machine. The recording started instantly. No static, no delay. It was my voice. Me. Is anyone there? The sound of my own voice on the tape made my stomach drop. Me, hello? This is County Dispatch. Do you have an emergency? There was no answer. Then I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow, uneven, almost wet. Me, what is that? The breathing grew louder. And then, voice. You'll be here soon. The tape stopped. I ejected it and just stared at it sitting in my palm. My skin prickled all over, and I felt a deep, sinking dread I couldn't explain. When I looked up, the wall clock in the training room read 3:07 a.m. again. I know that's impossible. My shift started at 8 p.m., and I'd already taken calls tonight. Hours should have passed, but the second hand wasn't moving. That was the last time I touched the box. But here's the thing. Sometimes, on the quieter nights, I hear a faint clicking sound from the back room, like a tape deck turning itself on. And once, just once, I swear I heard my own voice coming from behind that door. I thought I was done with the tapes after the first night. But I kept thinking about them. Not just the voices, the pauses, the way some of the callers seemed to breathe like they knew someone was listening. It was around 2 a.m. when I gave in and went back to the storage closet. I told myself I was just bored. It was a dead shift, nothing coming in except a drunk guy who thought raccoons were breaking into his shed. I could have stayed at my desk. I could have kept my headset on and watched the clock. But instead, I went back to the little cardboard box. The tapes didn't have labels, but someone had scratched tiny notches into the plastic. I noticed it that night. 4 of them had 1 notch, 3 had 2, and 1 had 3 deep gouges like fingernail marks. I picked a 2-notch tape. When I slid it into the old deck, I expected the same scratchy hiss. I didn't expect the first sound I heard to be my own name. Dispatch, is this you? The voice was male, young, maybe mid-20s. Nervous. His words were shaky, like he was whispering even though he was using a phone. I froze, my thumb hovering over the stop button. I can hear you breathing, the man said. I told myself it was a coincidence. There are a dozen people at the station who could have worked that call back then. My name isn't uncommon, but the man on the tape, he didn't sound like he was talking to a stranger. She's been in the hallway for 20 minutes, he said. She's not knocking. She's just standing there. A faint sound in the background, soft static, but under it the rhythm of a clock ticking. I don't know how she got in the building, he said. The front door was locked. There's a long silence after that. I almost thought the tape had stopped. Then, barely audible. She knows I'm on the phone. I felt a prickle run up my neck. It was the way he said knows. Not guessed. Not thought. Knew. I want to turn it off. Instead, I kept listening. Sir, I need you to tell me where you are, the dispatcher's voice said. Except the dispatcher's voice was mine. Not similar. Not close. Mine. The exact same pitch, tone, even a little rasp I get when I'm tired. But the call had to be from decades ago. And I've never worked a case like this. The man rattled off an address I didn't recognize. That's not showing up in our system. The voice, my voice, told him. Are you sure that's correct? I could hear the panic rising in the man's breathing. She's at the door now. Then a sound I still can't explain. It wasn't knocking. It was slower than that. Like fingertips dragging down the doorframe. A dry scrape. The man's breath caught. She's... Click. The tape ended right there. No goodbye. No resolution. I rewound it 3 times, thinking maybe it cut off or the cassette was damaged. But it always ended in the middle of a sentence. When I took the tape out, my hands were shaking. I should have stopped, but I picked another one. A 1-notch tape this time. This one started with rain. Heavy, pounding rain. You could hear it hitting metal, maybe a roof or a car hood. Then a woman's voice. I think he's in the trunk, she said. She was calm. Too calm. Ma'am, you think who is in the trunk? The dispatcher asked. Again my voice. My son, she said. He's knocking. There was a pause, then a muffled thunk, thunk, thunk. Not frantic, just steady. How old is your son? 8, she said. The knocking stopped. Now he's not knocking, she added. Now he's whispering. The dispatcher, I, asked what he was saying, but she didn't answer. The tape hissed for a while, just the rain filling the silence. Then, so faint I had to lean close to the speaker, a child's voice whispered, "Don't open it. It's not me anymore." I stopped the tape so fast it squealed. I didn't rewind it. I didn't check the rest. I sat there with my fingers pressed into my eyes until colors flashed behind them. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. That's when I realized none of these calls were in the system. We log everything, even prank calls, even hang-ups. The database goes back 30 years. But I searched the timestamp scratched into the corner of each tape. Nothing. The addresses didn't exist. The people didn't exist. The calls never happened. Or maybe they did. Just not here. Over the next week, I kept going back. Every time I told myself it was the last one. Every time I told myself I wouldn't let it get to me. But the more I listened, the worse it got. There was one where a man called because his mirror wouldn't stop showing someone else's reflection. One where a kid said he was locked in the basement of a house his parents swore they didn't own. One where a woman said she could see her neighbor standing in the yard, smiling, even though she'd watched him get buried 3 days ago. Always at some point in the call, my voice. It didn't sound like an old recording of me. It sounded like me now, speaking live, responding in ways I might respond if I were actually on the line. I stopped telling people at work about the tapes after I mentioned one to Steve, and he just stared at me and said, "We don't keep tapes anymore. Haven't for years." He acted like I was joking. I didn't push it. One night, around 4 a.m., I played a 3-notch tape. I'd been avoiding that one. The second it started, I knew it was different. No background noise. No rain. No ticking clock. Just breathing. Not the callers. Mine. Then my voice. "You finally found it." I froze. "This is the one you were supposed to hear," it said. I wanted to hit stop. I couldn't. "You've been wondering where they came from," it continued. "But you already know. You've always known." I didn't. I swear I didn't. "Listen carefully," it said. "This is not your first time here." There was a long pause. Then the sound of something dripping. One drop at a time. "You'll put this tape back when you're done," my voice said. "You always do." Then silence. I sat there staring at the machine until the sun came up. That morning, I locked the box back in the storage closet and told myself I wouldn't touch it again. But even now, I can hear them. Not the voices. Not the calls. The ticking. Somewhere under the noise of the station, under the ringing phones and the hum of the lights, a clock is ticking. And it's not hours that I didn't touch the tapes for 2 days after hearing the last one. I kept them shoved in the bottom drawer of my desk, under old incident reports and an unused headset, like I could smother the sound by burying them. But it didn't help. Every time I walked past that desk, I felt it. The pull. Like the box was breathing. You can only avoid something for so long when it's sitting 3 feet away from you. On the third night, the station was quieter than usual. The radios were dead, the phones still. My shift partner, Carol, was off sick, so it was just me and the glow of the monitors. That's the kind of silence where you start hearing your own heartbeat, your own blood moving in your ears. And in that silence, the box felt louder. I told myself I'd just take one tape out. One more, and then I'd lock the rest away. Just enough to satisfy whatever itch had been gnawing at me. The tape I picked wasn't labeled. None of them were, but I swear it felt warmer in my hand. I slid it into the player, the plastic click echoing too loud in the empty room. Static first. Then, faintly, the usual hum of the dispatch line. And then, "County Communications, what is your emergency?" I froze. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't Carol's. It wasn't anyone I'd ever worked with. It was deep, calm, the kind of tone they trained you to keep when someone's bleeding out or screaming in your ear. But it was a voice I knew. Not from work. From stories. From a wall. You see, in the main hallway of our building, there's a plaque. 6 names. Dispatchers who died on the job, either in the line of duty or from heart attacks mid-shift. Most people just walk past it without looking. But when you work here long enough, you learn the stories. And I knew that voice because of the first name on that list. Glenn Holloway. He died in 1998. I didn't believe it at first. Maybe it was just someone who sounded like him. Then the call kept going. The caller's voice came on, a shaky man saying there was someone standing in his yard. Just standing there. not moving, watching the house. He said it had been an hour. Do they appear armed? Glenn asked, steady, patient. No, the man said. They're just waiting. Glenn told him to lock the doors, stay away from the windows, keep the line open until deputies arrived. Then a long pause. And the man whispered, he's closer now. The sound on the tape shifted, like someone had brushed the mic. And then I heard it breathing. Not the caller's. Not Glenn's. A third set of lungs. Slow, wet breaths. Glenn's voice came back, lower now, like he was leaning into the mic. Sir, I need you to go to the back of the house. Do it quietly. I can't, the caller said. Why not? The man started crying, just little gasps between words. Because he's inside. And then the line cut out. I sat there, gripping the edges of the desk, waiting for the tape to roll again. It didn't. Just the click of the stop point, like the call had been cleanly severed. No follow-up. No log number. I checked the database. There was no record of that call. No call from that address. No dispatch to that location. And Glenn Holloway. He'd been dead 25 years. I should have stopped there. I should have thrown that tape into the nearest dumpster and pretended I never heard it. But something about Glenn's voice, it wasn't like hearing a ghost. It was like hearing someone trapped, still working, still stuck behind that console long after the rest of the world moved on. And I couldn't leave him there alone. The next tape I pulled started in the middle of a sentence, like it had been recording for a while. You're safe now, ma'am. Just stay with me. The voice was softer this time. Female. I knew it instantly. Jody Trent. She'd been here before my time, early 2000s. She was the only one on the plaque I'd ever seen a photo of. Short hair, tired smile. She'd collapsed at her desk during a multiple vehicle fire. Heart failure. The caller was an older woman, sobbing, saying something about her husband. At first, I thought it was another break-in or domestic. But then her words became clearer. He's in the wall, she said. He's in the walls of the house. I hear him moving. Sometimes he talks through the vents. Jody asked for an address, and the woman gave it. I felt my stomach turn. It was my address. The woman said she'd lived there for 30 years. Said she'd called before, but no one believed her. I hear him at night, she whispered. He tells me what he's going to take next. What does he say? Jody asked. The woman started listing things, small at first. Jewelry, a set of keys, then bigger, the family dog, her son's bike, and then, my husband, she said, and her voice cracked. He told me he was going to take my husband. Jody's voice stayed calm, but I could hear the strain in it. Where's your husband now? The woman didn't answer. All I heard was the faintest scrape, metal on metal. Then the line went dead. I couldn't move. My own walls felt smaller, like if I pressed my ear to them, I'd hear something breathing. By then, my hands were shaking every time I reached into the box. The next tape had no voices at all at first, just the sound of the open line, faint hum of the room. Then a single word. My name. Not sir, not dispatcher. My full name, spoken by someone I didn't recognize. And then, whispered, almost too quiet to catch, don't listen to the last tape. That was it. Click. Silence. I don't know how long I sat there. I think part of me hoped, if I didn't move, none of it would be real. But the tapes were still there, and so was I, and the air in the room felt heavier. When the radio finally crackled with a real call, I nearly jumped out of my chair. For a moment, I was relieved. Reality had returned. But then I looked down at the drawer, and I swear the box was closer to me than before. Like it had moved. I thought I was ready for the last tape. After everything I'd heard in the others, the screaming, the impossible voices, the names of people who didn't exist, I thought nothing could rattle me more. But I was wrong. The box sat on my desk like it had been waiting for me to come back. The other tapes were stacked neatly to the side, their reels wound tight again after I'd listened. But this one, the last one, I don't even remember pulling it out of the box. It was already sitting there. No label, no handwriting, just the faint scratch marks around the reel hole, like someone had tried to wind it with their nails. I stared at it for a long time before I touched it. My fingers felt colder when I picked it up, like the plastic had been sitting in a freezer. I told myself I was just imagining that. I've been telling myself that a lot lately. The tape slid into the player with a dull click. I didn't press play right away. I just sat there, staring at the blinking red light on the recorder, the little arrow pointing forward like it was urging me. When I finally hit play, there was a pop of static, but no voice at first. Just the faint hum of the dispatch room. I recognized it instantly. That low, constant drone of the air conditioning. The faint click of keys in the background. It was my dispatch room. Then I heard a voice. My voice. 911, what's your emergency? It was me. The exact cadence, the same slightly hoarse tone I get when I've been working too many shifts. I even heard the way my tongue sometimes clicks when I say emergency. I froze. The call continued. The person on the other end was breathing hard. It was wet, ragged breathing like they'd been running. There was no name, no address, just one sentence. They're in the room with me. My voice on the tape sounded calm, professional. Okay, sir, can you tell me your location? But the breathing got worse. A thump, something dragging. And then the caller whispered, they're behind me now. I knew the way I respond to calls like that. I'd done it 100 times before. But what I heard next wasn't how I would have handled it. On the tape, my voice said, don't turn around. Just describe them to me. My chest went cold. I've never said that to anyone. That's not in the book. That's not what we're trained to say. The caller whimpered. Then there was a scraping sound, like something heavy moving over the floor. They don't have a face. The words were whispered so low, I almost missed them. There was a long pause on the tape. No talking, just the hum of the room, the faint static. Then my voice said, is it touching you now? I pressed pause. My thumb hovered over the button. I sat there, staring at the machine, breathing hard. My heart was pounding like I'd been the one on the call. I wanted to stop. I should have stopped, but I didn't. I pressed play again. The caller didn't answer the question. There was a sharp inhale, like they'd just seen something they couldn't believe. And then they started crying, but it wasn't crying like grief or fear. It was a soft, helpless kind of sob, like they'd already given up. Then they said something that made my skin crawl. It's you. On the tape, I didn't answer. I just listened. It's you, the caller said again. You're standing here. I felt a rush of heat through my body. My throat was dry. I wanted to turn off the player, but my hand wouldn't move. The next sound on the tape was strange. Not footsteps exactly. More like the slow, sticky pull of something heavy lifting off the floor, step by step, getting closer to the phone. The caller's breathing stopped. And then, dispatch, the caller whispered. It's touching my shoulder. A long pause. Then my voice said, tell me what I'm doing. My stomach turned. The caller's voice cracked. You're leaning close. Your mouth is right next to my ear. Silence. And then my voice on the tape said something I can't forget. It's your turn. The line went dead. For a moment, I thought that was it, that the tape had ended. But then I heard the click of the headset again, the sound of me answering another call. Only this time, there was no other person. Just me. My voice on the other end was broken, panicked. Help me. Please help me. And the version of me answering said, calm as ever, what's your location? I was listening to myself call myself for help. It got worse. The me on the caller's side started describing things I could see right now. The coffee mug on my desk, the green pen by the keyboard, the exact stack of papers by my elbow. I looked at the mug. I looked at the pen. They were exactly where the voice said they'd be. I wanted to get up, to move, but my body felt like it had been poured in concrete. On the tape, my voice said, you shouldn't be sitting there. Not right now. I swallowed hard. My hands were shaking. Why not? The other me asked. Because in about 30 seconds, the voice said, something's going to walk in behind you. The sound of my own blood in my ears was deafening. I stared at the doorway, my heart hammering. 15 seconds, my voice on the tape said. The line was so calm, so sure. 10. I couldn't breathe. 9. 8. 7. I slapped the stop button. The room went silent, but it didn't feel empty. Every part of me wanted to turn around and check, but I didn't. I sat there, frozen, staring straight ahead, my hands gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. After a long time, I finally got up. My legs felt numb. I left the tape sitting in the player. I didn't rewind it. I didn't want to hear what came after 7. That was 2 nights ago. The tape is still in the machine. I haven't touched it. Haven't turned it on. But last night, when I came in for my shift, I noticed something. The tape reel had moved. Just a little. Like someone had pressed play while I was gone. And this morning, The reel has moved again. I think it's still counting down.